Chapter 996. Nangon, you said, I think the first person I need to thank for this movie is Lin Che. He gave Lin Che a lot of face. He looked at Lin Che and said to the camera, it's because Lin Che kept arguing with me that this movie became better and achieved better results than I expected. Lin Che has also convinced me with her professionalism. I feel that it's because of an actress like her that locally produced movies will become better and better. Of course, the box office earnings this time also have to do with her hard work, but I won't get a share of the money. The joke and the serious introduction didn't seem too rigid at all, making people feel that it was very interesting. This time, Nangon Yu's movie should be the big winner of the Golden Name Awards. On the television, many people were watching this grand event. Many people saw the scene of Lin Che winning the award on the television. Yu Minmin looked at her and sighed. She held her stomach and thought, this is Lin Che. After so many years, she finally successfully stepped onto this stage and obtained the glory she deserved. Mu Firen also stayed by the television at home. Watching this scene, she also felt very gratified and happy for Lin Che. Looking at the dazzling stage, she remembered that she had also stood on that stage and won this award. She felt as if it had been a lifetime and as if she hadn't walked out of this house for a long time. Actually, she had just left the place she liked in the past and hadn't been there for a long time. Thinking about it, she felt that she should go back. After leaving Mo Ding, perhaps she wouldn't be as bitter as before. She could also shoot some things she liked and do some things she liked. After all, she had obtained everything and didn't have much of a goal. She just wanted to shoot some things she liked. In front of the television, there were many people who were infinitely envious of Lin Che. Qin Wanwan was one of them. Thinking back to the Golden Name Awards ceremony, she also had a part in it, but this time she didn't even have the right to walk the red carpet. But looking at Lin Che, she didn't know why she was so lucky. After so many years, she was still able to return to the active front lines. Now that she was back, she was still able to return to everyone's eyes. Qin Wanwan admired her. She didn't know what kind of magic she had to be able to attract so many fans and talk about so many things. For a time, all the programs and radio stations were broadcasting her news. Abai also started to receive congratulatory calls from all over the country. After the Golden Name Awards, a banquet was prepared backstage. At the banquet, everyone came and went to congratulate each other. Those who won and those who didn't naturally had different attitudes. Those who had won awards were all beaming with joy as they spoke eloquently. Those who hadn't won awards couldn't show their discomfort because of the presence of the media. They could only pretend to be generous and listen. Everyone had their own opinions on who would win the award this time. However, they were already mentally prepared for Nangon Yu to be the winner. After all, it was a bit of a dark horse. It had suddenly rushed to the billion-dollar mark, and it was even a 2D movie. At that moment, Yang Ling also came over. Someone saw Yang Ling and hurriedly went over to congratulate her. Congratulations, you've won the Best Supporting Actress Award. Yang Ling smiled and fiddled with his clothes. Thank you, everyone. I was just lucky. When she turned around and saw the media, she smiled even more generously. Everyone watched as Yang Ling went in to deal with the media. He exhaled and said, seriously, I don't know how much money I spent to get the Best Supporting Female Lead. They bought it with real money. So what? If you don't like it, you can spend money too. I just think it's boring. Although he said that it was boring, he was actually just reluctant to spend money. It would really cost a lot of money. The Golden Name Awards was the most watched film award in Country C, and it was known for its fairness. Of course, there were people who cared about the Best Supporting Female Lead, and there were also people who didn't care. If there weren't many good works that were nominated, they could still give you the award if you spent a bit more money. However, it was different for the Best Female Lead. The Golden Name Awards didn't dare to mess around and ruin their own reputation. If the Golden Name Awards became less valuable, it wouldn't be worth it. Hence, fairness was still on a large scale. It couldn't be helped if there were some discrepancies in the small scale. After all, the Golden Name Awards were also managed by people. It was inevitable that there would be some loopholes. Naturally, everyone was envious of Yang Ling. She dared to spend money and do things. Moreover, after she won the award, there were indeed quite a lot of headlines. Many reporters surrounded her and asked her about the see-through outfit she was wearing and about her award. There were many topics about them. There would definitely be a lot of news the next day. However, most of the people who came to accompany her were only mentioned by name. It was already good enough to get a photo. Just as they were feeling envious, they heard someone say that Lin Che had arrived. The best female lead walked in leisurely with Nan Gongyu. The media immediately gave up on the others and looked directly at the best female lead, who was a hot topic. Her comeback this year was undoubtedly a success. Once she made her comeback, not only did she immediately snatch back the right to be a hot topic, but she also soared to the sky. Now, she had become a Best Actress. Coupled with the popularity of the reality show, she had directly entered the ranks of the A-list. In the past, people might have said that she was an A-list celebrity, but they still felt that she was just a hot topic and did not have any works that were truly popular. But now it was immediately different. Lin Che had already changed into a simple gown. It did not look as grand as before, but it was still elegant and fitting. The smile on her face was very appropriate. Perhaps it was because she had just won the award, but she gave off a very imposing aura the moment she entered. She did not need to say anything and had already attracted everyone's attention. She looked as if she had the power to suppress the entire venue. It made people feel a strong aura rushing out. While they were envious of her, they also sighed in their hearts. It was really different. Lin Che was wearing a long dress with a pinched waist. She had an excellent aura. When she walked in, everyone immediately surrounded her and congratulated Lin Che and Nan Gongyu. Some people looked at them from behind and felt even more envious. Look at her. She won the Best Actress award after just one movie. Didn't she want to act in a TV series before? Then, the director courted death and chased her out and terminated her contract. Yeah, what kind of TV series is that? She has such poor judgment. She's not doing it anymore. TSK, TSK. Aren't they regretting it to death now? Seeing that Lin Che did not act in a TV series and went straight to a movie to become a Best Actress, there's no use regretting it. She deserved it. Lin Che and Nan Gongyu finally managed to walk away from the wave of congratulations. However, she was destined to be the main character tonight. Wherever she went, there would be a group of eyes following her. Actually, she still had not recovered from the feeling of winning the award. She still had a feeling that she was still in a daze. Although she had been nominated for so long and had thought that she might win the award, the feeling was different from actually winning the award. Chapter 997. Lin Che and Nan Gong found a place to sit down. Since they didn't like to socialize, they decided to just sit and drink. Outsiders saw that Lin Che only sat with Nan Gong and ignored the others, but they thought that she was really arrogant. Lin Che had wanted to be more sociable before, but now she didn't think so anymore. Those who liked her would always like her. Those who didn't like her would not like her even if she tried to cater to them. Even if she didn't seem sociable, she still had many friends in the industry. Moreover, the friends she made were like Nan Gong, who were kindred spirits. She felt more at ease. However, now that Lin Che had won an award, not only the fans and the media were paying attention to her, but some people had also started to pay attention to her. They felt that she had won an award and was very popular. She was like a cash cow. Hence, when Lin Che and Nan Gong were sitting there, a man with a big belly walked over. With a Taiwanese accent, he said, Miss Lin, how are you? Lin Che looked up politely. Oh, hello. May I know who you are? My surname is Hu, and my name is Hu Kaizwang. I've been in the film industry for 2 years, but I've never had the opportunity to work with you. So he was a businessman. It seemed that he was an investor, and that was why he was invited here as a guest. Hu Kaizwang sat down at the side and looked at Lin Che. He looked very refined and had the aura of a businessman. However, Lin Che didn't know if it was because she had seen too many businessmen like Gu Jingze, but she felt uncomfortable with him. Lin Che didn't want to appear too unsociable or arrogant. After all, there were so many reporters here. She felt that she had been spoiled by the likes of Gu Jingze and Liu Beichen. That was why she felt that businessmen should be like this. But in fact, most businessmen should be like Mr. Hu was in front of her. They should be ordinary and conscientious in their business. However, Lin Che's starting point was too high, and she had actually lived with Gu Jingze. That was why she felt that other businessmen were not so good. He looked at Lin Che and said, "Miss Lin, congratulations on winning the award. Let me give you a toast first." Lin Che smiled, looked at the red wine in his hand, and picked up his own juice. When Hu Kaizhuang saw this, he quickly said, "Hey, today is Miss Lin's big day. How can you drink fruit juice?" "Seriously, I'll ask my secretary to bring red wine." Lin Che said directly, "No need, sir. I don't drink." Hu Kaizhuang said, "How can I do that? Does Miss Lin think that the wine here isn't good?" "Don't worry. How could I let Miss Lin drink the wine here? The wine here is indeed a little difficult to deal with. Are they all sponsored by a local winery? I'll get my secretary to bring my wine from the car." "Ah, no, sir, you misunderstood. I don't want to drink any wine." "Ah, Miss Lin." His face began to look a little gloomy and awkward, and the white flesh on his face looked a little conflicted. "Are you looking down on me?" After all, Nangong was still at the side. At this moment, she caught his eye and said, "Mr. Hu, it's normal for girls not to drink. If you want to drink, I'll drink with you." Hu Kaizhuang was an ordinary businessman. Although he had been involved in the film and television industry for more than 2 years, he actually only knew a little about it. He had invested a lot of money, but he hadn't gotten any returns. Because the films he produced were all lousy, no one bought them. There were many businessmen like him now. They felt that filming TV shows and movies was profitable and the cultural industry was getting more and more popular, so they wanted to get involved. However, they were indeed amateurs. They only knew one thing, and that was to invest money to buy some big stars to film a film. However, the money they invested was used to find big stars, and they didn't care about other things. They could change the director, the screenwriter, or anything else, but they had to choose famous actors. The one thing they had in common was that they didn't care about the director. So he looked at Nangong and snorted. "Who are you?" After all, Nangong had been in this industry for a long time and had seen many bosses like this. He smiled. "Who I am isn't important. What's important is that she doesn't want to drink." Lin Che didn't want to blow things up. With the media around, it wouldn't look good. Moreover, it wasn't good for Nangong to offend people because of her. Thus, she stood up and said, "Mr. Hu, if you want to drink, why don't you find someone else? I really don't drink." Hu Kaizhuang was instantly embarrassed. He glared at Lin Che and said, all right. You're not going to give me any face? Let me tell Miss Lin, don't miss this opportunity. Although you're the best female lead and the best actress now, there are always best actresses every year. Will you still be as popular next year? Humph, you're just an actress." Lin Che smiled. "I don't know how I'll be next year, but I can tell what opportunities are and what I don't want. So, I'm sorry, I don't think we're on the same page. If we're not on the same page, I won't waste any more words. Please." Hu Kaizhuang was stunned. He had never met an artist who didn't give him any face. Usually, an artist would put in a good word for an investor. After all, investors were different from others. They had money in their hands. Wouldn't it be better to have more connections than to offend someone? What if they invested in a big TV show or movie one day? Wouldn't they have a chance then? But this Lin Che was actually so arrogant. He said, good. Don't say I didn't tell you. I'm just preparing to invest in a big IP. You'll regret it when the time comes." Lin Che smiled. She really didn't regret it. She had only chosen the script to see if the production team could work with her. Seeing that she had no intention of changing her attitude after what he said, Hu Kaizhuang harumphed and left. Nangong pulled Lin Che to sit down. "All right, there are many people like this. They think they're God with money and can buy anything." Lin Che said, "Some of the rich people I know aren't like this. Although they were arrogant and insufferably arrogant, they wouldn't be this arrogant." She shook her head, picked up the juice, and continued to drink. As for that Hu Kaizhuang, he was cursing and swearing after he went out. What the hell is he? He's just an actor. I've never seen such an arrogant person. He just won an award. He's really something. He dares to offend anyone. Yang Ling heard Hu Kaizhuang's complaints. His eyes moved as he walked over and said, what's wrong? Boss Hu? She knew a lot of people like this. Because she attended a lot of dinner parties, she would always meet some bosses at them. Of course, Hu Kaizhuang knew her as well. He immediately said, I am Miss Yang. Isn't it that best actress? She has a big reputation and doesn't give others any face. Yang Ling smiled and said, Really? How could she be like this? Those who can enter this place aren't ordinary investors. How could she not have the ability to judge? Chapter 998. Hu Kaizhuang liked artists like Yang Ling. She had a sweet mouth and knew how to flatter people. Hu Kaizhuang said, That's right. I'm going to have a big investment soon. Initially, I wanted to see how good she was and let her participate in it to help her earn some money and fame. But seeing how arrogant she is, I'm not going to give it to her. Yang Ling's eyes lit up at the mention of a big investment. But she had heard too much of this kind of big talk. These people would say that they were investing recently, but there were not many who actually invested. But she would rather kill the wrong person than let it go. Who knew when she would encounter such an opportunity? She immediately said, What big production? I think Mr. Hu's big production must be very impressive. Hu Kaizhuang looked at Yang Ling and knew what she was thinking. Unfortunately, he had seen many women like her. Even though he liked the feeling of being complimented, he felt that it was quite boring when he was actually being complimented. He smiled and said, Okay, we'll definitely work together if there's a chance. He went up and pinched her, but everyone in the industry knew that Yang Ling was a coquettish person. It didn't matter if she took advantage of her. It was said that she would sleep with people when she was free, but no one knew if it was true or not. Yang Ling moaned. She looked very charming, but she had been taken advantage of. If she didn't know if the investment was real or not, she wouldn't give herself away so easily. She just looked at Hu Kaizhuang and leaned over to say, That Lin Che is arrogant, but it's only because her Magic Pen 3's bodyguards are very powerful. Also, she opened her own studio and has a lot of resources, so she likes to look down on people. If it weren't for those bodyguards, she would be afraid. Hu Kaizhuang chuckled. It's just a studio. He was the type who was stupid but had a lot of money. A studio probably only had a few million registered capital, which was really nothing. Yang Ling looked at a smug look and harumphed, not saying anything else. If he really dared to make a move on Lin Che and something happened to him, she would naturally sit back and enjoy the fruits of his labor. Even if nothing happened to him, she wouldn't be able to blame it on him. So, she naturally dared to say it. Yang Ling left coquettishly. Hu Kaizhuang stood there thinking about Lin Che. Although Yang Ling was a celebrity, he wasn't as good as Lin Che. No wonder he wasn't as popular as Lin Che. The higher the status, the more people would want to conquer it. Things that could be touched so easily were meaningless. Therefore, even if Yang Ling often attended dinner parties and knew many people, it was impossible for him to have so many resources. Because everyone had played it before, it was no longer fresh. What resources could he give her? However, Lin Che had never heard of her attending any dinner parties, nor had he heard of anyone playing with her. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this female celebrity, Lin Che, was extremely mysterious. The more mysterious she was, and the more obedient she was, the more excited he was. Thinking that Yang Ling was actually not as beautiful as Lin Che's face made him want to touch it. It was smooth and supple like white egg white. Yang Ling's face even had knife scars on it. What was the point? Nan Gongyu and Lin Che ate together until the media asked the two of them to take pictures. Only then did the two of them take the two little gold figurines outside to take pictures. The two of them went over to take photos. Nan Gongyu looked at Lin Che and said, I remember that you can drink a little. Lin Che said, Can I not drink now? However, Nan Gongyu looked at her suspiciously. With a shrewd look on his face, he sized her up before his eyes finally landed on her stomach. Hey you're wearing flats today and you're not drinking. That's a little weird. Lin Che glared at him fiercely and threatened, None of your business. Nan Gongyu smiled and said with a sharp gaze, Don't tell me you're going to rest for a while and not film anything for the time being. I have a movie that I'm still preparing. Lin Che really wanted to kick him and tell him to stop talking nonsense. However, at this moment, the reporters came again. Nan Gongyu looked like he was concealing his merits and reputation. He seemed to have understood something and nodded his head in a profound manner. The reporters surrounded them and smiled as they looked at the two of them. The two of you seem to have a good relationship. Have you become friends? Do you keep in touch in private? Lin Che smiled. Nangon, you said, we occasionally get together in private. Are we friends? Nowadays, friends don't need to hang out with each other every day. We help each other out when there's a problem, and we hit it off. We're sincere friends. That's enough, right? He was speaking the truth. Weren't friends like that nowadays? Lin Che said, that's right. It's good for us to be friends like this. If we really hang out with each other every day, it might turn into a world war. So, it's better for us to keep our distance. This way, our friendship will be more harmonious. The reporters laughed even more when they heard this. At the side, there were other people who were watching this scene. For a moment, looking at the two of them, they secretly felt that the two of them were quite compatible. If they were a director and an actor, the director would be a big director and the actor would be an A-list actor. They could speak so well and were so funny. How compatible they were. Do you guys think that the two of them got together? That's normal. Otherwise, why would such a good role be given to Lin Che? Moreover, the male lead isn't that outstanding. It's the female lead who's outstanding. She's still so supportive of Lin Che. This Lin Che is really something. Wherever he goes, there are men who like him. Maybe he just slept with the director. Why are you guys so excited? Hu Kaizhuang also heard this. The more he looked at Nan Gongyu and Lin Che, the more he felt that they had slept together. Nan Gongyu looked like a pretty boy, so he was naturally different from him. He was a little unconvinced and thought, isn't he just good-looking? He's a director. These big stars had all been slept with by directors. It was really enviable and jealous. His heart was itching. He felt that the more he looked at Lin Che, the more beautiful he looked. There was a kind of energy that could make people fascinated. Lin Che still didn't know that there were people fantasizing about her. Halfway through the banquet, she couldn't help but look to the side. She wanted to call Gu Jingze and ask him where he was. She wanted to go and find him. She took the phone and went out. Behind her, Dongzi and the others carefully told her to walk slowly. Just as she was about to make the call, she heard someone call her name from behind. She turned around and saw Hu Kaizhuang walking over. Miss Lin, why are you walking so fast? At this time, Dongzi, who was beside her, suddenly stopped her. Unexpectedly, at this time, a few gunshots rang out. Several bodyguards instantly became alert, but it was a little too late. A few shots directly hit their legs. Chapter 999. With a shake of his leg, Dongzi knelt on the ground first. That wasn't an ordinary gun. It was a tranquilizer gun, therefore, compared to ordinary guns, this kind of gun had a special characteristic, which was that it was fast. If it was an ordinary gun, it would have been easy for them to react. Because they thought it was an ordinary gunshot, it affected their judgment instead. With that, he fell to the ground. Dongzi's eyes paused and looked at his master. For a moment, he really wanted to die. Lin Che was also shocked, but she wasn't shot. She just looked at Hu Kaizhuang, who brought people over. She was stunned and couldn't say a word for a long time. For a moment, she couldn't react. She didn't know how this happened at all. What are you doing? Hu Kaizhuang clapped his hands and snorted. He looked at the security guards on the ground. The people he brought with him followed behind, and there were many of them. He had come with the mindset that no matter what, he had to get his hands on her today. When the time came, he would take a few nude photos of her. Once he threatened her, she would obediently submit to him. Whatever he wanted her to do, she would do it. What noble superstar. In the end, she still had to listen to him. Hu Kaizhuang clapped his hands and looked at Lin Che with a wretched expression. Miss Lin, I really admire your movie. I want to go out and have a private chat with you. He looked at Lin Che carefully. There was no extra mark on her face. She looked very clear. Her figure was also so good. The places that should be fat were fat, and the places that should be thin were thin. Moreover, it was so natural, there was no trace of artificial. No wonder she could be so popular. There was a reason. Yang Ling's design couldn't even be compared to a finger of hers. He thought about being alone with her later, and his saliva almost flowed out. Lin Che stepped back and looked at the people in front of her. She couldn't help but feel a little cold in her heart. She didn't think about anything else. She just thought about the child in her stomach. She wanted to run away, but she was afraid that if she moved too much, the child would be hurt. She really wasn't suitable for strenuous exercise now. This is the backstage of the Golden Award. Are you sure you want to be so bold as to do such a thing here? People will come here at any time. Aren't you afraid that someone will come and see you? You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Hu Kaizwang laughed heartily. I've said before, since I can be a guest at the Golden Awards, my status is different. Do you think I'm some boss who owns a small factory? I'm rich. If I say I'll support you, I'll support you. If I say I want you to ban me, I'll ban you. With my status, you'd better listen to me. It's not too late to regret now. Just say something nice to me and make me happy. Whatever investments, whatever movies, they'll all be yours. Lin Che retreated. I'm not worthy of such a high status like yours. You, get out of my way. Don't come any closer. At this time, the anesthetized Dongzi directly pounced on him. Although he could no longer feel his lower body, he relied on his willpower to crawl over and hug Hu Kaizwang's lower limbs. Stay away from my families, miss, Dongzi said as he grabbed onto him with all his might. Hu Kaizwang was just daydreaming when he didn't expect to be grabbed by someone. He was furious and said to him, let go of me. Dongzi held on to him with all his might. Hu Kaizwang snorted. You're just a little bodyguard and you're still fighting with me. Do you want to die? Let me tell you, I can kill you with one finger. As he said that, he took a look, picked up the phone in his hand, and smashed it at Dongzi's face. Lin Che was shocked. Dongzi. She was about to go forward when Dongzi hissed. Miss, don't come over. For the sake of my body, I'm fine. He smashed Dongzi's face again and again. Dongzi held on to him with all his might. In an instant, the corner of his mouth and eye were smashed, and blood immediately seeped out of his face. Hu Kaizwang really wasn't worried about hurting anyone, so he used a lot of strength. However, he didn't expect that this Dongzi would let him hit him without moving. He hit him so hard that he didn't dare to hit him anymore. He only felt that this person was a madman. What kind of bodyguard was this? He was just anesthetized, and the master who hired him was taken away. He wouldn't die, so why did he have to fight so hard? Moreover, he didn't seem like a normal person. He actually didn't even frown when he was in so much pain. No wonder that Yang Ling said that the bodyguards around Lin Che weren't easy to deal with. Fortunately, he was prepared in advance. However, no matter how much Dongzi could bear it, he was still anesthetized. The amount of anesthetic used was very large. It was already good that they didn't faint immediately. Hu Kaizwang was furious. He hurriedly said to his few rotten bodyguards, What are you all looking at? Hurry up and help me. In comparison, why didn't he hire such loyal and discerning bodyguards? These people were all like mall security guards. Other than being more powerful than him, they really couldn't do anything else. A few bodyguards immediately came up and pulled Dongzi away. Hu Kaizwang snorted. What are you doing? If your master has my help, he will definitely be the icing on the cake in the future. As he spoke, he walked directly towards Lin Che. Lin Che gritted her teeth as she looked at Dongzi. If she wasn't really worried about the child in her stomach, she would really have rushed over. She couldn't bear to see the people around her suffer because of her. However, she couldn't. The child was too weak. She retreated, watching Hu Kaizwang walk over step by step. Unexpectedly, at this moment that a motorcycle suddenly approached from afar. Hearing the sound, Lin Che hurriedly raised his head. At a glance, he saw the motorcycle that was rushing over, and his eyes lit up. It was a Black Hawk. Hu Kaizwang was a little stunned. Because of the Golden Name Award, the security here was very strict. No one could enter. How could there be someone driving a heavy motorcycle directly here? While he was still in a daze, he saw that the motorcycle actually drove directly towards him without hesitation. Io, this person doesn't want to live. Hu Kaizwang hurriedly ran away. Unexpectedly, the motorcycle still rushed in his direction. He shouted at the bodyguards in fright. Hurry up and stop it. Stop it. Hurry up and go. But how would these people dare to seeing how crazy that motorcycle was? Wouldn't they be courting death if they went up? That motorcycle definitely looked as if it was going to kill them. Seeing this, Lin Che was also scared out of his wits. He hurriedly said, Black Hawk, don't go, come back. This place was a mess. There were so many people on the ground who had fainted. He couldn't care less about Hu Kaizwang. The Black Hawk seemed to have heard the sound. The motorcycle drove directly towards Lin Che and quickly came to a stop with a click. He took off his helmet and looked at Lin Che. He jumped down and said, "How are you?" Lin Che hurriedly shook his head. "I'm fine." But suddenly, she remembered Dongzi and hurriedly walked over. Dongzi. As for Hu Kaizwang, now that no one was chasing him, he gritted his teeth as he looked at the person who had suddenly appeared. Chapter 1000. You. Where did this hooligan come from? How dare you bump into me? Let's see if I... Black Eagle turned around and glared at him coldly. For a moment, Hu Kaizwang didn't expect to see his cold and desolate eyes glaring at him. For a moment, he was so shocked that he forgot to continue speaking. Black Eagle snorted disdainfully. His eyes seemed to show that he wasn't willing to look at him. Hu Kaizwang was furious. Seeing that there were so many of them, he said to the people behind him, "Attack! There are so many of you. Why are you afraid of one person? Hurry up and beat him up. If he dies, it's on me." Everyone thought that he was right. There were so many of them. Why should they be afraid of him? Especially now that he had gotten out of the car. Therefore, like a swarm of bees, several people rushed up together and directly punched and kicked Haiying. However, Black Eagle snorted coldly. When a man shouted and kicked him, he grabbed the man's ankle with one hand and pushed him to the side in disdain. The man was pushed to the ground, and he didn't know what had happened for a long time. When he raised his head, Black Hawk had already fought with so many people alone. Black Eagle held one person in each hand, and his movements were agile. He didn't waste any time. There were so many of them, but they weren't a match for him. At this moment, the people who had been anesthetized on the ground had magically woken up. Their bodies were stronger than ordinary people. Hence, as long as the anesthesia wore off a little, they could stand up and continue beating people up. Hu Kaizwang didn't expect such a good plan to be completely ruined because of these godlike bodyguards. Moreover, these people were about to walk towards him after beating them up. He was so frightened that he turned around and quickly ran inside. As he ran, he saw the security guards at the side. He shouted, "They're beating people up! They're beating people up! They're going to kill people!" The security guard saw that something was wrong and quickly went over to take a look. Black Eagle stopped in midair with one hand and made everyone stop. Then, he raised his head and looked at them. "All right, don't move." The security guards looked at this man and suddenly remembered that he was the man who had sent Lin Che here on his motorcycle. Black Eagle said directly, "Ask your building's boss to come down now." The security guards looked at each other. What was the meaning of this? Black Hawk stood there and snorted. He took out a cigarette from his pocket and put it in his mouth. He looked at them and said, "Did you hear that?" That low roar caused everyone to tremble all over. Looking back, those people just now, were they all beaten down by this man? For a moment, they felt that this person was definitely not an ordinary person, so they hurried to find the boss. The boss hurriedly ran down. When he saw who it was, he almost knelt on the ground. Mr. Mo, what happened?" Black Hawk looked at the person who had come. This was someone he knew. He knew that since this place could hold a Golden Name Award, it must be a very powerful building. This was the place where all kinds of banquets had been held in the past, and every banquet was extremely grand, so Black Hawk also knew him. The boss definitely knew Black Hawk. Black Hawk said directly, "What's going on? Your security here doesn't even know that something has happened over there." At this moment, Lin Che had already rushed over, wanting to see what had happened. On the other side, Hu Kaizwang had already run away, and Black Hawk, seeing this, said directly to the boss here, "The man who just did such a despicable thing to my sister." He ran away. Now, I want you to think of a way to make him apologize to my sister, personally otherwise. You can only apologize on his behalf. You can only do it on his behalf that the boss was so scared that he was about to pee again. He hurriedly swore, "I will definitely make him go. Definitely. Don't worry." He then looked at Lin Che. Who would have known that the current Best Actress Award winner was actually Black Hawk's sister? Black Hawk ignored him and turned to Lin Che. "Let's go. I'll take you to have a checkup first. Are you okay?" Lin Che was really a little exhausted. He had just been scared. Black Hawk saw that her face was pale and hurriedly supported her. No, Lin Che supported him and still wanted to say that she was fine. All right, if anything happens to the child, Gu Jingze will definitely burn this place down. Thinking of the child, Lin Che stopped being pretentious. She nodded with a pale face and said to him, Dongzi. All right, I'll get someone to send them to the hospital. Let's go first. Lin Che followed Black Hawk to the hospital. On the way, Black Hawk informed Gu Jingze. Then, seeing that Lin Che's complexion was gradually improving, he felt that he should be fine. Actually, Lin Che was really just scared. His body wasn't very healthy now, so he usually couldn't feel it. But once there was a problem, it would be more obvious, which was why he looked so pale. Lin Che went to the hospital for a checkup. On the other side, Gu Jingze had already arrived quickly. Black Hawk was watching the nurse administer the injection. His gaze made the nurse tremble, and her movements became much slower. She didn't dare to simply insert the needle. It was as if she would be killed if she inserted the needle even a little bit wrongly. Lin Che, how are you? Gu Jingze rushed over and looked at Lin Che. The little nurse was so scared that she almost fell. Gu Jingze pushed the nurse away and saw Lin Che. Lin Che stood up hurriedly. I'm fine. Don't listen to their nonsense. Gu Jingze held Lin Che's hand. Her hand was still cold, so he placed it on his chest. What happened? It's so cold. Are you scared? He reached out and touched her cheek intimately. It was as if he didn't notice the people next to him. The people behind saw such a handsome man run in like the wind and held her hand warmly, covering it for her. In an instant, their hearts calmed down. Black Hawk frowned. He wanted to ask if there was anyone else next to them. What was going on with the two of them, making him stand there? Lin Che shook his head and said, I'm fine. I was just worried, but I'm fine now. Gu Jingze hugged her, and patted her back. Yes, it's fine now. It's fine. Then, he noticed Black Hawk at the side. Naturally, at the first instance, the people below said that it was Black Hawk who had brought those people away and saved Madam. They looked at Black Hawk, and for the first time, he showed a grateful expression. No matter how many grudges he had with Black Hawk, whether he had gotten over it or not, he had gotten over it at this moment. He felt that it was good for Lin Che to have such a brother. At least, he wasn't the only one protecting her anymore. Chapter 1001. Lin Che pushed Gu Jingze away. I want to see Dongzi and the others first. Gu Jingze's face darkened. His eyes looked gloomy, making people feel as if a storm was coming. They still need to be dealt with. Lin Che's heart sank. Listening to his cold words, he suddenly remembered that they were the Gu family's security guards. They had to be absolutely loyal, and they had to be competent. Today, Dongzi and the others had been negligent, which led to the current situation. Could it be that they would still be punished? Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze. What are you going to do? What do you mean? They've been very responsible. If Dongzi hadn't hugged that person at the end, something might have really happened to me. Gu Jingze frowned as he looked at her. If they had been responsible from the start and didn't give anyone a chance, they wouldn't have had to hug that person so tightly. But, all right, Lin Che, rest well. Your health is the most important thing right now. Put everything else aside. I'll deal with them, but I'll do it slowly. Don't worry. At this time, Gu Jingze didn't want Lin Che to think too much, so he was ready to push it back. Today was supposed to be a happy day. He didn't want it to be ruined by an idiot. As for that idiot, Black Eagle said, all right, it's fine now. You guys rest first. I'll deal with that Hu guy. Don't worry, you'll be satisfied. Gu Jingze nodded. He wasn't going to deal with this matter. Since Black Eagle had made a move, he believed that Hu guy would be punished. In the end, he would ask how he dealt with it. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che and said, let's go. I'll take you home first. Okay. Lin Che and Gu Jingze left the hospital together. In the car, Gu Jingze asked Lin Che, how are you feeling? Lin Che shook his head. I've been fine for a long time. Just now, Black Hawk took it too seriously, so he insisted that I go to the hospital. Actually, I was just shocked. I'm no different from usual now. Do you think I don't know my own body? You guys, don't make a fuss over nothing. Gu Jingze patted her back. Lean here and sleep. You must be tired after a night. Lin Che leaned over and breathed in the familiar scent on his body. For a moment, he felt much more relaxed. That night, there were surprises, accidents, happiness, and scares. It was hard to say if it was a good day or a bad day. At that moment, he felt really tired. Leaning against the wall, he slowly fell asleep. It was easy to get sleepy during pregnancy. She had been a little nervous over the past few days, so she hadn't slept well. Today, she was finally not nervous, so it was easier for her to fall asleep. Gu Jingze tilted his head and looked at Lin Che, who was leaning against the car. He smiled slightly, raised his head, and said, "All right, drive the car to the coast." "Yes, sir." His wife was now a movie queen, so he naturally had to prepare a surprise for her. Actually, he had prepared this long ago, all for this day, to give her a share of happiness. Lin Che had no idea that when he fell asleep, he had already set off from B City. After driving for 2 hours, he had arrived at the seaside of the port. Lin Che woke up in a daze. He was woken up by some noise. She opened her blurry eyes and saw that she was in Gu Jingze's arms. "Whoa, are we home yet?" Lin Che asked. "No," Gu Jingze said. Lin Che said, "We're not home yet." They should be home in less than half an hour. She had only slept for a short while. Why did she feel like she had slept for a long time? However, it was indeed a little dark. It didn't seem like she was at home. She raised her head and saw the scene in front of her. That was when she was shocked that how was this home? Wasn't this outside? Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che. "We're not going home today, my heavenly queen." Lin Che was shocked. She covered her mouth and looked at him in surprise. "Where are we going then?" Gu Jingze smiled and kissed her forehead. "Aren't we already here?" Lin Che raised her head in surprise. She saw the scene in front of her. They had come to no other place but a sea. In the darkness, the sea appeared dark and turbulent. Coupled with the light from the shore, it felt like a different world. Taking a closer look, the light was coming from a huge cruise ship. There were people coming and going on the cruise ship. A few people were packing their things, and the loud noise that had woken her up came from the ship. She was stunned and realized that it wasn't a dream. Gu Jingze was carrying her onto the cruise ship. He smiled and said, "How about a cruise tonight?" Lin Che said, "Today." "My God, you didn't tell me either." "How can I surprise you if I tell you?" Gu Jingze smiled. There was a hint of pride in his curved eyebrows. Lin Che was also infected and looked forward to it. Surprise, surprise. This was really a surprise. Gu Jingze carried her and boarded the cruise ship. The 2 rows of people stood upright and bowed when they saw the 2 of them. "Welcome, sir and madam." Gu Jingze raised his hand slightly, signaling for his men to leave. Lin Che saw a white dining table placed on the deck, surrounded by rose petals. On the dining table, beautiful pearls were swaying in the wind. It was covered by a colorless transparent glass. The dining table was extremely romantic. Lin Che's heart trembled as he looked at it. At that moment, he felt like a young girl's heart was filled with happiness, as though she had been cured. "You prepared so much." Gu Jingze hugged her. "How is it? Do you like it?" Lin Che pressed her forehead against his. "I like it," Gu Jingze said. "Come and sit then." He raised his hand and signaled for someone to start the cruise. He pulled her to the table with him. The violin played on the side, and like a prince, he pulled her hand and made her sit down. Lin Che propped up his head and looked around. The ship was already moving, but it didn't seem to be moving fast. The rumbling sounds mixed with the sound of water made people feel like they were in a dream. In the dark night, Lin Che wondered why they had suddenly come here and why they were suddenly going out to sea. "Why did you want to board the cruise?" Lin Che asked. Gu Jingze said, "Won't we be recognized outside?" "Ah, that's true. But there's no need for a cruise. There's so many people. It's such a waste." Gu Jingze tapped the tip of her nose. "You used a few years to prove yourself. Why isn't it worth it to waste this celebration for you?" Lin Che's heart skipped a beat again. Many people said that after being married for a long time, the couple would become indifferent and there would no longer be so-called surprises. However, Gu Jingze didn't seem to want to be that kind of ordinary couple. He kept surprising her and constantly refreshed her impression of him in her heart. Chapter 1002. Gu Jingze said, "What do you want to eat?" Lin Che said, "What else can I choose?" Gu Jingze said, "It's a celebration for you. Of course, you have to be happy. You can eat whatever you want. Otherwise, what's the point? We don't have to eat things we don't like just for the sake of romance. It's better not to be romantic. Lin Che smiled at Gu Jingze. Her heart was still swollen, and she felt that whatever he said was right. She smiled and tilted her head. Then can I really eat anything? What if there's nothing here? Gu Jingze snapped his fingers and said with a smile, Idiot, I brought 30 chefs with me. They could do anything you can imagine. Duh. Bring 30 chefs on a cruise. He would be beaten up if he went out and pretended to be pretentious. She pouted, unable to tease him. She could only think of something to eat. She was hungry now, but she was picky about what she wanted to eat. She didn't want to eat normal food, but hot pot. She looked at Gu Jingze. She knew that he didn't eat much spicy food. She smacked her lips and said, Then, can I eat hot pot? Duh. Gu Jingze felt that hot pot wasn't healthy. She was pregnant, but she was still so thin. Of course, he wanted her to eat something good. He wanted to shove all the nutritious foods into her body, but her body wouldn't be able to take it. Thus, he was anxious every day, not knowing what to do with her. Gu Jingze said, What hot pot? Lin Che said, You're the one who said that you'll let me eat whatever I want to eat because I'm celebrating for me. Now I can't eat what I want to eat. I haven't eaten hot pot in a long time. Isn't it perfect for hot pot on such a cold day? She frowned. She lowered her head and drew circles on the table with her finger. Gu Jingze frowned as he looked at her pitiful look. Her pitiful look was different from other people's. Her eyes seemed to be moist, and it made people's hearts go cold. He didn't know if he would be like this when he saw other people. Anyway, seeing her like this made his heart ache. Lin Che. Also, I eat more when I eat what I like. Eating more will make me fat, right? Lin Che raised her head and looked at him with her bright eyes. Fine, he compromised. Gu Jingze really couldn't do anything to her. Lin Che sensed that Gu Jingze had loosened up, so he immediately said, Okay, Gu Jingze, aren't you here to help me celebrate today? Gu Jingze sighed and reached out to rub her hair lovingly. He really couldn't do anything to her. I owe you. When Lin Che saw this, he immediately became happy. Gu Jingze immediately asked someone to prepare the hot pot. Hearing that they were going to eat hot pot, the servants were not ready for a while. She had thought that since it was so romantic, it should be some Western food. Therefore, what he prepared the most were the seasonings for Western dishes. All kinds of things had been prepared, but he didn't expect that there would be such a discrepancy. However, it was obvious that Madame wanted to eat it. It's not the first time that Sir has allowed Madame to do whatever she wants. Even though she had been a lot more domineering recently and always forced Lin Che to eat nutritious food, that was because Madame didn't really mind and was more obedient. As long as Madame wanted it, she could just act coquettishly and Mr. Lin would obediently give in. They were already used to it, so they could only sigh. Anyway, it was up to Madame's taste. They would do whatever she wanted. It was their master's fault for not doing things the usual way. Fortunately, the hot pot was easy to prepare. Because Gu Jingze didn't like spicy food, he had prepared a double-decker pot. Looking at the romantic atmosphere, the two of them were eating hot pot and looking at the seascape. Everyone sighed. If it were an ordinary person, it would be impossible for them to waste such a day eating hot pot and spoiling the atmosphere. However, this was nothing to Gu Jingze. Hence, he could do whatever he wanted. As long as he was happy, it was fine. Lin Che put a piece of spicy meat into his bowl. Gu Jingze looked at her speechlessly. Lin Che said, Do you want to eat it? This is a reward from the Empress. Gu Jingze waited for her. A reward from the Empress. Can I eat it in another way? What? He lowered his head and took a bite. It was so spicy that he frowned. The taste was too strong, and he couldn't bear it. Then, he took revenge and kissed her lips across the table. Woo! Lin Che let out a cry. She felt that the hot kiss made her lips burn up. He smiled and licked her lips. Eating like this, there was a different kind of moisture, and it tasted much better. He swallowed the moisture, licked his lips, and looked at her. After the spicy kiss, those tender and beautiful lips looked even more alluring. He smiled and said, Do you dare to let me eat again? Lin Che curled his lips. Your ability to counter tricks is getting better and better. Gu Jingze said, Yes, it's because of you. He remembered eating with her like this in the past. Back then, How could she have imagined that one day he would be so willing to taste spicy food with her? Gu Jingze looked at her lips and felt as if his heart had been hooked. That kiss just now wasn't enough. He couldn't touch her now. If he did, he wouldn't be able to stop. His starry eyes met her face, and they slowly turned scarlet. He stared at her until she couldn't eat anymore. She raised her head and met his deep eyes. She felt that the dangerous aura was getting closer and closer. What are you doing? Are you full? His voice was hoarse, as if he was going to eat her up. It made Lin Che want to step back unconsciously. Lin Che said, I'm full. But what if I'm not full? Then, you should eat more. You need to eat with food. What do you mean by food? As soon as his voice fell, he had already lifted her chin with lightning speed. Facing her lips, he started to eat her again. It was as if he was tasting something delicious. He licked her lips again, and the taste made the tip of his tongue tremble. Lin Che was still protesting, but as he sucked, she felt his scent slowly envelop her, overbearingly invading all her senses. And his lips were definitely not closed. She didn't know if it was because they hadn't been intimate for a long time, so he was holding it in. That action and that strength were all attacking her sensitive areas. Her chin was gripped tightly by him. His overbearing scent and masculine scent ignited her hormones. She was extremely sensitive now, not to mention the fact that the person teasing her was a sexy expert like Gu Jingze. For a moment, she felt that she was on the verge of collapse. If she didn't stop, she would have pounced on him herself. Chapter 1003. Gu Jingze let go of her and begged. The strange thing was, no matter when he was filming or watching a movie, the man's expression would be very lewd, which would make people not interested at all. However, Gu Jingze's face didn't show the slightest bit of embarrassment. He didn't look like a perverted man at all. He was just so affectionate that she couldn't take her eyes off him. It was as if she was about to be sucked in by his red, domineering gaze. Perhaps a good-looking person wouldn't look ugly no matter what he did. Anyway, she had never seen anything ugly from Gu Jingze. Gu Jingze licked his lips and said to her, "No, I'm still not full." Not full. She couldn't do anything about it. "Come, go in and help me." Gu Jingze whispered into her ear. As the fireworks bloomed in her mind, the fireworks outside also bloomed. Lin Che lifted her head weakly and looked outside. "Oh my God, what is this?" Gu Jingze was apologetic for her coming. Their sweat blended together as he hugged and kissed her. "It's fireworks, idiot. You're the idiot. Of course I know it's fireworks. I mean, why are there fireworks? Do you like it?" He looked down at her. "Yeah, I like it. No girl wouldn't like fireworks. It's good that you like it. Come, I'll carry you up." He carried her. Because it was cold outside and they were both covered in sweat, they couldn't go up to the deck, so they stood by the window and watched. The fireworks bloomed in the sea, which was even more beautiful. As Lin Che watched on, he felt as if his heart was being enchanted. She nestled in his hard embrace and found a comfortable position to lean against. "When did you prepare it? This couldn't have been prepared just now, right? Even if they were to transfer people over, it would still take some time." "Half a month ago," he said. "You knew I would win the awards so early?" Gu Jingze said, "Yes, I have confidence in you." "I don't even have confidence in myself," Lin Che said. Gu Jingze said, "If it's not you, then there must be something fishy. I know your ability, so it must be you. Moreover, you're my wife. I only want to have confidence in you." Lin Che was once again touched by the sweetness. He leaned against the wall and said, "Silly girl." She said, "You're so romantic and so good at surprising me. Tell me, if one day you don't want me anymore, won't I cry to death? Why would I not want you? When I get pregnant and gain weight?" "Fool, your imagination is running wild again. That's not it. I just suddenly feel that you've raised me so much that I feel that all the men outside are bad. I feel that everyone is rotten." "Really?" Gu Jingze said proudly. "That means your IQ is still salvageable. You know who's good and who's bad." Lin Che said, "Oomph." She thought that no matter who it was, it would be hard to find a man who was so thoughtful and attentive and who treated her so well for so many years. The two of them snuggled there, enjoying the peace and tranquility of the sea. She felt that at this moment, she was happier than ever. She had gotten the recognition that she wanted, and the person she loved was by her side. She didn't care about other people's celebration. What she cared about most was that he was by her side and happy with her. So, people were really social animals. Happiness had to be shared with others to be richer. At this moment, she felt that she was really very satisfied, so satisfied that her body and mind were surging. Outside, Hu Kaizhuang really felt that he was going to be miserable. He had just reached home in a hurry, but before he could ask who it was, someone called him. He looked at the screen and saw that it was Boss Lee. He was the boss of the building that hosted the Golden Name Awards. The two of them were naturally familiar with each other. Otherwise, Hu Kaizhuang wouldn't have been invited to the Golden Name Awards so easily. Boss Lee said, "Old Hu, do you know who you've offended?" "Who did I offend?" "Haiying. That's Haiying. Do you know that?" "Haiying. That's the world's #1 killer." "You fool. He's developing in C country now. Everyone has to call him Mr. Mo. It can't be. I've heard of that Haiying before. How could it be him? Otherwise, do you think that anyone can single-handedly take care of your trash like this?" Hu Kaizhuang thought back and felt a wave of fear. He didn't think that there would really be such a person in the world. Then what should I do? Is he very vicious? He won't take my life, will he? How would I know that a small celebrity like Lin Che would know such a person? No wonder no one dares to covet him, even though he's so good-looking. Hey, why do you have to think about this for no reason? Help me think about what to do first. Hu Kaizhuang was suddenly anxious. "Go and receive your punishment yourself," Boss Lee said. "Me? Receive my punishment? Won't I be chopped into pieces?" "Sigh, how is that possible? Nothing happened in the end. Lin Che is fine too, right? You just need to go and beg him. Be more sincere and send him something. He will see that you have truly changed for the better. You just need to make him happy." Hu Kaizhuang really started to think about it. Boss Lee thought, "If I don't tell you that, you can go yourself. If you run away in fear, then Haiying will look for me. I won't go and risk my life with Haiying. That would really kill me." Chapter 1004. Hu Kaizhuang heard his words and immediately said, "Okay, I'll listen to you. Sai, this black eagle is so powerful. He won't really kill me, will he? How is that possible? I think so too. Isn't this a lecture? He can't just casually kill anyone." Right. How is that possible?" With that thought in mind, Hu Kaizhuang felt that it was better to solve this problem. He immediately got someone to prepare a generous gift. Then, he called Boss Lee and said, "These things cost me a few million. Do you think it should be enough?" Boss Lee thought to himself, "A few million? You want to get rid of Black Eagle with just a few million?" But of course, he wouldn't be stupid enough to say no. He said, Yes, it's definitely enough. You're right. Be generous. You don't have anything. Go. Hurry up. Otherwise, if you wait too long, people will think that you ran away. Wouldn't that make them even angrier?" Yes. Thank you for your reminder, Old Lee. Let's meet up later." Just like that, Hu Kaizhuang confidently went to find Black Eagle. Black Eagle's house didn't look very grand. Unlike the Gu family, Black Eagle was a loner. It wasn't a big family, and the only people who could come were his brothers. Naturally, he couldn't be bothered to build a big place. As long as the yard was big enough to store things, it was fine. But even so, when Hu Kaizhuang saw how big this place was, he started to feel a little guilty. Looking at this aura, it didn't seem like someone who would care about something worth a few million. However, this was a token of goodwill. No one could give away their entire fortune to someone else, right? Wasn't it enough as long as the thought was there? With that thought in mind, he sent someone to report. While waiting, he saw the people outside smiling at him. Thinking that they were probably Black Eagle subordinates, Hu Kaizhuang didn't give them any face. He sat there and waited, looking around. This was the first time he had been to such a big shot's place, and he was a little curious. He looked left and right, feeling that this was indeed the territory of a big shot. The things were simple and elegant, not extravagant at all. However, he didn't know if it was because there were a lot of people standing there, but he felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. Just then, Black Eagle finally came out. For a moment, a few people followed Black Hawk and walked out quickly from inside. Their footsteps were natural and unrestrained, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. After he came down, he curled his lips and looked at Hu Kaizhuang. He didn't expect that Boss Lee was a smart person and had tricked him into coming here. Hu Kaizhuang caught sight of his devilish smile. He immediately felt a little guilty as he looked in the direction of the Black Hawk. Mr. Mo, this little one had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I didn't know that Lin Che had such a relationship with you. This little one is here to apologize. The darkness at the corner of Black Hawk's mouth widened. Looking at Hu Kaizhuang, his cold smile made one feel even colder. Is Lin Che's name something you can casually call out? The moment Black Hawk opened his mouth, Hu Kaizhuang felt even colder. Hu Kaizhuang would have been infuriated by his arrogant look if it had been in normal times. He was such a young man, yet he still acted so high and mighty in front of a slightly older person like him. However, he really didn't dare to show any emotions today. Hearing his arrogance, he could only accept it and say, I'm sorry. It's Miss Lin. Miss Lin, I really offended someone, so I especially came to ask for forgiveness. These are my gifts for you. Take a look. No need. Black Hawk didn't even look at them as he waved his hand. When he saw that his things that were worth millions of yuan seemed to be worthless in his eyes, he became even angrier. However, he still didn't dare to. He swallowed his saliva and said, How about I prepare some new gifts for you? All right, why don't you give me some gifts yourself? It's fine as long as you came. What gift do you want? Black Hawk looked straight at him. Hu Kaizhuang was instantly frightened. He felt that he was being stared at by those eyes. It was as scary as a weak rabbit being stared at by a wolf. Black Hawk said, It seems that you still don't understand me, but it's okay. There's no need to understand me now. Men, take him away. Seeing that he was actually going to take him away without saying anything, Hu Kaizhuang's face was filled with shock. He hurriedly said, What are you doing? What are you doing? You'll know when we get to the back. No, I'm not going. Hu Kaizhuang was directly dragged to the backyard. In the backyard that was plunged into darkness, he was scared out of his wits. He didn't know what he was about to face, and he was even more horrified. Black Hawk immediately followed and said to him, Release Little Gray, Little Lawn, and Little A.O. Take good care of this guest that came here today. What was that? Hu Kaizhuang understood when he went down. Because the vicious dogs that were being dragged out by a few people looked like fiends. They looked so fierce that they seemed to have grown fangs. What are you doing? Could it be that he was going to let these dogs, these vicious dogs? Look, Little Gray can't wait anymore. Black Hawk laughed, revealing a tinge of cruelty. Hu Kaizhuang was really frightened. Impossible. How dare he do this to me? Black Hawk, you can't do this. If you kill me, don't even think about escaping. Black Hawk snorted and looked at him. It seems that you really didn't understand properly before coming here. But you will soon understand that the so-called human life is actually nothing to me. My hands are stained with too many. It doesn't matter if you die or not. What? How could there be such a person? How could there really be such a person? Hu Kaizhuang kept looking at those dogs. Black Hawk couldn't be bothered anymore. He turned around and said, All right, let them have fun. Then he waved his hand and ordered the people to leave, leaving the dogs behind. Screams came from the backyard, but no one cared. Black Hawk knew that these dogs probably couldn't kill people. At most, they would make people miserable. It was indeed meaningless to just take his life. This could be considered as a great lesson to him. Since he was half dead, even if he didn't die, Black Hawk couldn't be bothered to appreciate it and left. Gu Jingze and Lin Che enjoyed themselves outside and wouldn't come back for the whole night. On the other side, the news of Lin Che being banned had already been directly reported by the major media. Because of the Golden Award, all the major media worked overtime overnight and were doing all kinds of reports. Early in the morning, no one knew that Hu Kaizhuang was tortured to death somewhere. He really didn't dare to offend Black Hawk anymore. No one knew that after Bosley heard the news, he sighed and thought to himself that this Lin Che really couldn't be offended. With such a cruel person like Black Hawk behind him, he really couldn't be touched in the future. Chapter 1005. But everyone already knew that Lin Che was the best female lead. Furthermore, the next day, all the magazine covers were filled with news about Lin Che. Lin Che's past programs, past works, the clothes she wore that day, the aura she exuded, everything was discussed. Lin Che's name was everywhere. All of a sudden, Lin Che became a big hit. Even though Yang Ling tried her best to wear a see-through outfit, she still only occupied second place. Everyone felt that Lin Che was becoming more and more elegant and knew how to dress better. As for Yang Ling, she was only treated as a person to gain publicity. Although there were many topics to talk about, she was a lot more notorious. Lin Che and Gu Jingze played at sea for a day before slowly returning. As soon as they reached shore and the signal was better, Albai called urgently. She said, "Lin Che, you ran away as soon as you came back. I can't handle it here." Lin Che asked, "What's wrong? You can't handle it?" "My phone is exploding with calls. Advertising contracts, movie invitations, TV series invitations, program invitations. I really don't know what to say." Lin Che knew that she had just won an award, so there were probably a lot of people inviting her. She said, "All right, don't worry. I'll go back and take a look." She quickly arrived at the company and found that everyone was really busy. As she walked back and forth, the phone kept ringing. The scripts in the company were already piling up like a mountain. Albai crossed her arms and looked at Lin Che. "Look, there are so many scripts. Are you going to read them until next year?" Lin Che was speechless. He walked over and flipped through them. He didn't expect that after he won the Best Actress award, there would be so many invitations and such a big influence. Lin Che said, "Does everyone who wins suddenly feel like they're being praised to the heavens?" Albai said, "That's not true. There are a few. A movie queen who came out of nowhere doesn't have that much attention. After a while, no one mentioned it anymore. It's because you're famous. This time, you're at the top. Everyone has to admit that you're an A-list big shot. That's why there are so many invitations." "Ha, you're really getting better at flattering people," Lin Che said. Albai said, "Am I telling the truth?" Lin Che looked at it and said, "But I've decided not to look at it. I'll rest for the time being, and I'm not going to accept anything." "Ah, it's time to rest." Albai looked at her stomach. "But that's true. Gu Jingze definitely won't let you out again. Will he also keep you at home, like Min Min?" Lin Che said, "That's not necessarily the case. It's just that I want to rest for the time being for the sake of the child. Also, I don't want anyone to know that I have a child. Right now, I've already gotten what I deserve, and I'm very satisfied. I haven't thought about what I'm going to do in the future. Going back and resting for the time being is also a good way to calm myself down and think about what I want, right?" Albai shrugged. "Well, I'll listen to you anyway. Then these interviews. I can still do some interviews. Can't my stomach tell for the time being? But I won't be participating in any programs. I won't accept any scripts for now either. I also want to take advantage of this break to properly manage my film company." "All right, but you'd better not go out for the next few days. There are reporters everywhere trying to interview you. It'll probably be very annoying." Lin Che thought to himself speechlessly. It seemed that there were always gains and losses in any situation. He had obtained the Best Actress award and gained recognition, but at the same time, he had lost a bit of freedom. However, it was fine if he thought about it. Lin Che returned home. Without Dongzi by his side, he was still a little unused to it. When he got home, he thought of Dongzi. He got out of the car and asked, "Dongzi and the others haven't come back yet?" The servant said, "Madam, we don't know about this." You didn't see them at home?" "No. Mississippi usually, people who make mistakes will be taken to the training base to be punished. They shouldn't be back." "What?" Lin Che panicked. He remembered that Gu Jingze had said that there would be punishment, but they had gone out to sea later, and this matter was never mentioned again. Was there still punishment now? Lin Che quickly stood up and called Gu Jingze. At this moment, outside, the servant said, "Madam, Mr. Amo is here." It was the Black Hawk. Lin Che had just walked out and saw the Black Hawk. "Did you see Gu Jingze?" The Black Hawk saw that Lin Che was a little anxious and asked gratefully, "I didn't see him." "What's wrong?" "Don't worry." Lin Che said, "I'm worried that Gu Jingze is punishing them." As Lin Che said this, he had already walked out in a hurry. The Black Hawk said, "Okay, I'll help you find Gu Jingze. I have something to tell him. Lin Che said, Do you know where the Gu family's training base is? Ah. The Black Hawk looked at her. Are you going there? I heard that people who make mistakes will be taken there. I want to take a look. Looking at the Black Hawk's stunned expression on the phone, Lin Che was sure that he definitely knew. Take me there. Hurry up. Lin Che pulled the Black Hawk and walked out. Hey. Although I know, I found out secretly. This is not good. Of course, the Black Hawk knew. He had secretly found out. What's not good about it? You already know anyway. What can he do to you? The Black Hawk was dragged out by her helplessly. Outside, the people of Black Hawk saw their boss being dragged out by someone. However, the Black Hawk didn't seem angry at all. He just reluctantly got into the car. They couldn't tell that the Black Hawk still doted on his sister after becoming a brother. Otherwise, no one would dare to treat the Black Hawk like this. However, Lin Che was Gu Jingze's favorite, so she must be much braver than the average person. Just like that, Lin Che pushed the Black Hawk to the training base. The place was very far from a city. Lin Che's impression was that it was in the direction of the power plant, but he never thought that there would be a training base there. However, there were very few people there. Even if there was something there, few people would notice it. When they arrived, they saw that the place was indeed different from what they had imagined. There was an inconspicuous large field. From the outside, it looked like a prison. There were towers, anti-theft nets, and high-voltage electricity. After the Black Hawk pulled Lin Che down, Lin Che walked over directly but was pulled back by the Black Hawk. Be careful. This is the Gu family's level 1 defense. If you touch it, you'll be electrocuted. Okay. It doesn't look that serious. If it looks serious, what's the point? Wait, I'll go talk to him. The Black Hawk pulled Lin Che behind him. Looking at the Black Hawk, Lin Che couldn't help but want to laugh. He felt that the Black Hawk was becoming more and more like a brother. Chapter 1006. Heiying said, Gu Jingze is inside, right? The people at the door immediately became alert. Dozens of guns were raised in Lin Che and Heiying's direction. Heiying snorted. This is the madam of the Gu family, the future madam of the Gu family. Are you blind to point a gun at her? Hurry up and go in and tell Gu Jingze. Otherwise, if something goes wrong later and you're nearby, you can go in and be punished. When the security guards at the door heard this, they looked at Lin Che carefully. Lin Che was still standing there, staring in front of him, not knowing what to do. Of course, they could still recognize their own madam. During the training, they had dabbled in all the members of the Gu family. When they saw that it was really Lin Che, the people at the door hurriedly put down the guns. Gu Jingze was famous for how much he doted on this madam. Even Gu Jingze didn't dare to point a gun at her. So how could they be so disrespectful? Someone hurriedly went in to inform Gu Jingze, who was inside. Then, the door opened wide, and the people upstairs came down and said respectfully, Madam, sir has invited you in. Lin Che nodded. It was his first time entering such a place, so he felt a little strange. Fortunately, Heiying was still at the side. He was in front, so she followed behind and looked around curiously. It was a completely different world inside. It didn't look as crude as the outside. Other than the training ground in the distance, the other buildings were very modern. It even looked like a futuristic world. It looked very advanced. The door was a sliding door that could only be opened after the visitor unlocked it with their fingerprints and eyes. The two of them went in and found that it was a blue world of technology. Lin Che couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said, Why is this place? Heiying turned around and smiled. This is the training center. Isn't it for training these security guards? Why doesn't it look like a training place? It looks more like a science museum. Heiying laughed. Gu Jingze has protected you too well, so you don't know. Lin Che tilted his head. Don't know what? Black Hawk said, The Gu family security training does not only train martial artists. There are many different types of security. For example, there are bodyguards who protect the master's safety. There are also secret guards who investigate in secret. There are also higher-level spies who gather information everywhere. There are also many technological criminals who do research here. They study all kinds of high-end facilities for the professionals of the Gu family to use. There are also your bodyguards and personal stewards. Many of them are all-round. After all, there are not many of them, and it is very troublesome to train them. It takes time and effort, and they are very rare. Lin Che was very surprised. All right, I've never cared about these things. Black Hawk laughed. This is the closest one to Bee City. Other cities and other countries have training bases of the Gu family. He turned back to look at Lin Che. Just building all these costs a lot of money. This is also why the Gu family is more powerful than other families. They are building their own country. Lin Che was very surprised. He had never thought that the Gu clan he knew was actually more powerful than he had imagined. Lin Che said, "Then how do you know all these?" Of course I've checked." Lin Che said, "Logically speaking, it shouldn't be easy." Black Hawk laughed. "Of course. That's why your brother is also very powerful. Arrogant that he wondered if all men had this problem." Lin Che looked at him and smiled. As he walked inside, he saw Gu Jingze walking toward him. The people at the door had said that Lin Che came with Black Hawk, so Gu Jingze did not personally go out to pick her up. After all, Black Hawk would take care of her. But when he came out, Gu Jingze's expression was very gloomy. Glaring sharply at the Black Hawk, he quickly walked to the side of the Black Hawk. "How many bases like this do you know?" Black Hawk spread his hands. "Just one." "Huh." Gu Jingze snorted. He looked at him with an expression that seemed to say, "Do you think I'm an idiot?" Black Hawk touched his forehead. "All right, I know 3. Gu Jingze still looked at him with an indifferent expression. Black Hawk frowned. All right, I know 7. Is that enough?" 7 that there were a total of 10, and he actually knew 7. If he wasn't Lin Che's biological brother, he would probably kill this extremely dangerous man right now. Black Hawk said, "I've been targeting the Gu family for a long time. It's impossible that I didn't find out about this. But don't worry, I'm the only one who knows about this. I haven't told anyone else." Gu Jingze snorted. "Then why did you bring Lin Che here today?" Black Hawk said, "Is Lin Che an outsider?" Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che and didn't say anything else. He walked over and said, "What are you doing here? You can call me if you need anything." Lin Che pulled him. "Gu Jingze, are Dongzi and the others here?" Gu Jingze frowned and lowered his head in silence. Lin Che became even more anxious. "Can you not punish them too harshly?" Gu Jingze said, "This is the rule of the family." Lin Che looked at him. "But since you've already given them to me, they're my people. They're my soldiers. Don't I have the right to punish my own soldiers?" Gu Jingze said, "The way you deal with them will definitely not satisfy me." Lin Che said, "Although it won't satisfy you, it's the way I want it to be. I don't want the people around me to be emotionless machines. So I hope to give them more opportunities." Gu Jingze. She tugged at his clothes. "If you can't listen to me, then I don't want these soldiers anymore. I don't want any soldiers in the future. They're not your people anyway. They're not mine at all. You." Lin Che turned his head angrily. Gu Jingze looked to the side. The people around them were still watching. Gu Jingze walked up to Lin Che. "Listen to me. What are you talking about? Are you trying to persuade me to listen to you? But I don't want to listen, so don't say it." Gu Jingze sighed deeply. This is the rule of the family for many years. Lin Che raised his head and looked at Black Hawk. "Do all these families have these kinds of rules?" Black Hawk said, "Probably." Lin Che said, "Then do you also punish people to death like this?" Black Hawk said, "How can that be? I'm very humane. Moreover, this kind of thing is about showing kindness and power, not just suppressing them." Lin Che turned around and looked at Gu Jingze again. "Look, Black Hawk and the others didn't suppress them blindly. They didn't punish them too harshly. They're also very loyal." Gu Jingze looked at the two of them. He looked at Black Hawk for a while and then looked at Lin Che. "I thought you two didn't look like siblings before, but now you really are siblings." Chapter 1007. Hei Ying and Lin Che couldn't help but look at each other. Is that so? Is that so? Maybe it is that they were different from Gu Jingze. They were still soft-hearted and didn't like to be so tough and harsh. Gu Jingze pinched his chin and thought for a while. "Okay, then I'll leave these people to you," he said. Hearing this, Lin Che immediately became happy. "Really? Thank you." Gu Jingze looked at her. Although he was worried and had his own principles, what she said was right. They were her bodyguards, and she had the right to choose how to deal with them. Gu Jingzi said, "You can't leave them without any punishment." Of course not. Lin Che really didn't know how to punish them. But after Gu Jingzi said so, she still followed Gu Jingzi into the room. Inside, the place that was tightly controlled seemed to be heavily guarded. It was more secure than the outside. Gu Jingzi walked past them and gave them a look. Then, the sliding door inside slowly opened. Inside, there were a few people lying on the ground. Lin Che was shocked. They were the bodyguards who followed her that day. Not all of them went with her. Some of them stayed at home and were on duty that day. But they didn't expect to encounter such an incident. They couldn't go back after that and were brought here. Lin Che ran over. Dongzi, hearing Lin Che's voice, the few of them raised their heads one after another. They thought they would never see Lin Che again, but they didn't expect to see their miss again after being locked up for a few days. All of a sudden, they were very excited, and their eyes shone with a rare brilliance. Miss, Miss. Dongzi's face was swollen. It seemed that he hadn't been treated. Lin Che's heart ached. Although it was painful, he still stood there and looked at them. You've shown your loyalty, but at the same time, I've also seen your shortcomings. You spent so much time and trained for so long, but you almost lost your life because of a few hooligans. If they had used real guns this time and not anesthetics, you wouldn't have had the chance to scream in pain now. You know that, right? They were also very guilty and didn't dare to raise their heads. Although they were the best in the training period, they still had too little experience. Thus, when encountering such a situation, he underestimated the other party too much and did not make any preparations. They accepted their punishment for underestimating the enemy. Lin Che said, "So, this time, I must punish you." Dongzi was so angry that he suddenly knelt on the ground. He lowered his head and put his hands on his knees. "Miss, we have no regrets in whatever way you want to punish us. Now I wish I could die there and apologize with my death. I have no face to see, Miss, I..." Lin Che closed his eyes. "All right, I don't know if we'll die or not. It all depends on your endurance. From tomorrow onwards, you will." She looked back at Gu Jingzi and said, "Go to the ancestral hall of the Gu family and kneel for 3 days and 3 nights. You're not allowed to eat or drink." Gu Jingzi really wanted to roll his eyes. This punishment looked a little torturous, but to these people who had undergone strict instigation training, it was nothing. When the people present heard this, they instantly raised their heads and looked at Lin Che. Their eyes couldn't help but turn red. They originally thought that they would lose half of their lives this time and would probably not be able to serve Miss anymore. But now, unexpectedly, Miss didn't despise them. 3 days was nothing. As long as they could stay here, they would not complain even if they had to kneel for a year or so. However, Miss was too good to them. They almost caused Miss to get into trouble, but Miss was still so tolerant to them. At this moment, several people had already secretly vowed in their hearts that if they didn't die this time, their lives would belong to Miss in the future. With this narrow escape from death, in the future, even if they really died on the battlefield, they would never return in such a failure again. Not to mention anything else, this feeling of failure had made them want to die many times. Lin Che stood there and slightly smiled as she looked at her personal soldiers. They were all her people, and this made her feel very at ease. She felt as if she had a big family. Gu Jingzi naturally brought Lin Che away from this place very quickly. There was a lot of equipment here, and the radiation was too high. Lin Che's body couldn't stay here for too long. When they reached home, Lin Che was in a much better mood. She was packing up when she saw Gu Jingzi come in. She said, "I've already told the company that I won't take on any jobs in the future. I'll rest at home for a while." Gu Jingzi walked over, held her hand, and let her lean over. She knew that Gu Jingzi was still worried. She squeezed his strong arm and said to him, "Gu Jingzi, it's okay. I'll be fine. Don't worry about me all the time. In the future, I'll always be by your side, Lin Che. I'll protect you so that you won't get hurt again." Lin Che said, "It's okay, Gu Jingzi. It's not that serious. If anything happens to me, I might even drown in the bathwater at home. If I'm fine, I'll live well even if there's a storm of bullets. There's no use in worrying too much. Gu Jingzi knew. He knew it all. But he hugged Lin Che and let her lean in his arms. But I can't imagine anything happening to you. Lin Che said, even if I let those bodyguards go, it doesn't mean anything. They've actually done very well. It's not a big deal to give them a chance. Now, I feel that they'll be more loyal. Don't worry. Don't think that they'll be unreliable in the future just because they made a mistake. They're still reliable. I have confidence in them. She knew that he was still worried that these new bodyguards wouldn't do well. Actually, he really had this thought in his mind. He wanted to arrange for the few, most capable bodyguards around him to be with her. However, casually changing bodyguards would be a form of harm to the bodyguards. It would also destroy their sense of loyalty. They couldn't be used casually. Gu Jingzi didn't care about it himself, but when he thought of Lin Che being in danger, he was extremely worried. He couldn't help but want to protect her. If he could, he would even be willing to keep her in his body. It was a pity that he wasn't a kangaroo. Otherwise, he would have her by his side at all times. He said, I just can't help it. I can't help it. Lin Che, when I think about how he wants to hurt you, I want to cut him into pieces myself. I can't think about what I'll do if you're irreparably hurt. I don't even dare to think about it. So I just want him to suffer a fate worse than death. Lin Che knew that he was so nervous because he wanted to be good to her. She could only lean into his embrace and say, I'll be fine. Really? Gu Jingzi knew that once a person like him had a weakness, he would immediately become extremely weak. However, Lin Che already existed. Chapter 1008. Just then, Lin Che's phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was a familiar number. It was a call from the servant who took care of her grandmother in the south. Her grandmother was still there. She was worried that no one would take care of her, so she sent a servant over. She had been calling to report about her grandmother. Seeing that it was her, Lin Che picked up the phone. It's so late. What's the matter with Grandma? Madam, the old lady, is in the hospital. What? Lin Che was shocked again. She said, Madam, what do you think we should do now? The old lady's health is really failing. The doctor said that it might be organ failure. I'm afraid that she doesn't have many days left. Lin Che's heart sank. She quickly said to the servant, take care of her in the hospital. I'll be there soon. No matter what, she had to go and take a look. She raised her head and looked at Gu Jingzi, who was beside her. Gu Jingzi had already heard what she said on the phone. Looking at Lin Che's expression, he naturally understood what she meant. But now, Gu Jingzi said, are you going there now? Lin Che nodded. From what the servant said, I'm afraid that Grandma's condition is not very good. I'm worried that there's really something wrong with her. If I delay any longer, I won't even be able to see her for the last time. Lin Che choked with sobs as she spoke. Gu Jingzi quickly wrapped his arms around her and let her lean on his chest. Okay, I'll go with you. Hearing that, Lin Che raised her head and said, but you're still very busy. Grandma's business should be my business. If anything happens to her, I should be there. I'm her grandson-in-law, right? Okay. Lin Che looked at him gratefully. Gu Jingzi said, okay, pack up first. I'll go and prepare. Just like that, the two of them took the Gu family's plane and rushed to the hospital. On the way, Lin Che had already made countless preparations. She quickly called Sutsun to inform her about it. Sutsun also rushed over. Because she had seen her mother before, Sutsun also knew that she probably didn't have many years left. After all, she was already over 80 years old and on the verge of death. Sutsun was also old, so she was much more accepting of such matters. However, it was inevitable that she would feel sad. She had only enjoyed a few days of bliss, and now she was gone. She had not even been able to serve by her side for a few days. She was definitely not feeling good about being separated forever. Lin Che was worried all the way. Gu Jingzi looked at her and comforted her. It's okay. You'll know what's going on when you get there. Lin Che said, I know. Grandmother might not be able to pull through. Gu Jingzi said, life and death are decreed by fate. Moreover, Grandma will die sooner or later. If you're too sad, Grandma won't be able to rest in peace. Lin Che nodded. He knew that if it was organ failure, Then even if his grandmother died of old age, she didn't have any other illnesses. After they got off the plane at the private airport, Gu Jingze's men drove them from the provincial capital to the small town. Grandmother was staying in the small town's hospital. Because she knew that there was nothing wrong with her grandmother, she didn't go to any big hospital. If she tried to prolong her life, it would only make the old woman feel more pain. Grandmother didn't want to walk anymore. When they entered the hospital, the helper quickly came out to welcome them. Seeing that both of them had come, her face was full of worry. "Madam, the old woman is inside, but she's unconscious. The doctor said that there's no other way." Lin Che quickly walked in and saw his old grandmother lying there. Her face was still the same as before, but she no longer had the vitality that she used to have. She knew that birth, aging, sickness, and death were out of their control, but she still couldn't bear to part with her. She squatted down and held the old woman's hand. She grabbed her and said, "Grandmother, I'm here. Lin Che is here. Can you hear me?" Grandmother's hand seemed to move. Lin Che quickly held it excitedly, but the next moment, she didn't move again. At this moment, the doctor came. Gu Jingze brought the doctor out first. He looked at the doctor and said, "How is the old woman?" The doctor only shook his head slowly and said to Gu Jingze, "If you want to show your filial piety, you can bring her to the big city for treatment. But it's actually useless. The old woman's organs are deteriorating rapidly, and it has already reached her lungs. I think she'll die in 2 days." Gu Jingze waved his hand. "Thank you, I understand." The doctor looked at Gu Jingze. Facing such a handsome man, he also hoped that he could help, but unfortunately, there was no other way. After a long time, Lin Che came out. Her eyes were a little red, but she still tried her best to control her emotions. Looking at Gu Jingze, she said, "Luckily, grandmother doesn't seem to have lost weight. It seems that she's been living well recently." Gu Jingze said, "Of course, we've taken good care of grandmother. Ever since they knew of grandmother's existence, they had been taking good care of her. It could be considered as a token of our appreciation." Gu Jingze looked at the time. Mother should be here soon. Indeed, Sutsun arrived at this time. She came from Country M. She used Gu Jingze's special authority to help her fly here directly. She didn't have to go through the border, so she could arrive so quickly. When Sutsun arrived at the hospital and saw Lin Che, she couldn't help but feel sad. "Xiao Che, where's your grandmother?" Lin Che only looked inside. Sutsun's eyes became wet. She walked over and said, "Xiao Che, don't be sad. I'll go and take a look first." Lin Che nodded and held his mother's hand. She felt better when her family was by her side. Sutsun had stayed here for a period of time. She accompanied her mother from sunrise to sunset and talked a lot. Fortunately, before her mother passed away, she could still listen to her mother talk about the past. This was already a gift from the heavens. Lin Che looked at Sutsun and her grandmother from outside, then looked at Gu Jingze, who was beside her. She suddenly felt that as long as her lover was by her side, nothing else mattered. Money and honor were actually not as important as the people by her side. She leaned on Gu Jingze's body and looked inside. Her heart ached. However, at this moment, outside, someone from the hospital suddenly came in and said, "Sir, madam, someone is causing trouble outside. He said that he wants to snatch old madam away. He said that she's not your relative." "What?" Lin Che looked at the doctor in surprise. Gu Jingze stopped Lin Che. "Don't be anxious. Let's go out and take a look." The person outside was the village committee director, Wang Shi. Seeing the two of them coming out, Wang Shi sized them up. He saw Lin Che at first glance and naturally recognized that she was a superstar. As for the other man, he didn't know him. They had long known that old madam was the superstar Lin Che's grandmother. However, they weren't in the same household. Chapter 1009. Also, the household registration had never been changed. Before they met, no one knew that Lin Che was the old lady's granddaughter. No one knew that the old lady had a granddaughter either. In other words, their relationship was not protected by the law. The villagers knew that they had bought a place for the old lady and built a house. The place was big and beautiful. It was very different from the ugly houses in the village. Of course, Gu Jingze hired people to build those houses, and the designers were all from the Parliament building. The houses were all in rural style, returning to nature, and were very grand. The design fee alone was astoundingly expensive. It was a masterpiece. Of course, it couldn't be compared with those damn mud buildings. However, the people from the village committee only thought that the house was big and beautiful. Some people even liked the house and kept asking if they could buy it at a high price. They said that they were willing to pay a few million yuan for it. When the village committee heard that, they were tempted. They thought that they could take the house back to the village after the old lady died. So, when they saw Gu Jingze and Lin Che visiting the old lady, they immediately became alert and rushed over. They had a foundation. The house belonged to the old lady, and the place belonged to the old lady. It had nothing to do with them. So, no matter how much money Lin Che spent to build the house for the old lady, it wouldn't belong to Lin Che. The people from the village committee knew about this, so they dared to come and find them. The old lady was still lying on the bed, but they were already prepared. The people from the village committee looked at Lin Che. It wasn't easy for a superstar to come to the town. It was their first time seeing a superstar. So, when they arrived at the hospital, many people gathered outside. There were a few villages around the town. The old lady's village was not far from the town. It was only half an hour's drive away. The villagers came straight to the hospital. The people outside looked at the scene curiously. They thought that it was a medical dispute. But when they saw the handsome man and beautiful woman in front of them, they didn't think that it was a medical dispute. When the people from the village committee saw Lin Che, they said, "Who are you? Why are you all here when the old lady is dying?" Lin Che looked at them. He still didn't know what they wanted. "Me? I'm Lin Che. My grandmother is lying inside." The people from the village committee laughed. "Your grandmother? We've lived together for so many years, and we've never heard of her having a granddaughter. Where did you come from? Just say that she's her granddaughter. We don't believe you." "That's right. The old lady has been alone for many years. How could she have a granddaughter? Now all of you leave. We suspect that you are delaying the old lady's treatment." "That's right. We just heard that the hospital has given up on treating her. What's going on? Are you hoping that the old lady will die? That's why you don't want to treat her. You're too cruel. Why? Now that the old lady is dead, you can occupy the old lady's house?" Lin Che immediately sensed that something was wrong. He looked at them and said, "What do you mean? My grandmother is still lying in there, and you keep talking about her." Huh. They were obviously up to no good, which made Lin Che extremely furious. Gu Jingze narrowed his eyes as he watched from the side. He immediately understood their intentions. He stopped the agitated Lin Che and looked at them. "What? If we're here to occupy the house, what are you going to do?" When the people from the village committee heard that, they immediately put their hands on their hips and said rudely, "Why? This person is from our village. According to the rules, if she has no relatives and no heir, the village will take back the land. This land belongs to the village, and no one else can take it away. You're all outsiders. None of you are registered here. The house and the land don't belong to you. It's useless for you to come back to attend the funeral." When Lin Che heard that, he immediately understood what was going on. In the past, he had heard of people coming to take over the house and land before a person died. He didn't expect that he would encounter such a thing today. It was just that these people were openly shouting that they wanted to take back the land. Wasn't this a little too arrogant? Lin Che snorted and said, "The land belongs to my grandmother. Don't even think about taking it back." "Huh. Just because you say it's your grandmother, it's your grandmother." At that moment, Suitsun heard the quarrel and rushed out. When she saw so many people outside, she was a little surprised to see the people from the village committee in front of her. When they saw Suitsun, a few of the villagers were a little stunned. Because they had lived in the village since they were young, some of them knew Suitsun. Since she was young, Suitsun had always been an oddity in the village. Other children were dirty, but she was clean every day. Other children would pee and be covered in mud, but she was like a pure white flower, untainted by dust. Everyone felt that she didn't look like someone from the village, but more like a child from the city. And because Suitsun was very beautiful and famous in the surrounding villages, there were many boys who pursued her. The people in the village married early. Many of them were married at the age of 16. However, Suitsun's heart was set on school. She didn't drop out of school, nor was she willing to give up on her studies. Many people came to propose marriage, but she didn't agree. Everyone thought that she was arrogant and wanted to find someone from the city. She looked down on the village. But unexpectedly, one day, it was she really got into university and went to be city. She never came back. When they saw Suitsun today, most of the people in the village who were her age had white hair. However, only her temples were a little white. Her cheeks were still rosy and fair, and there weren't even a few wrinkles. It was as if she was still a teenage girl. Suddenly appearing in front of them was shocking. This Suitsun, could she be a vixen? When they saw Suitsun, those who knew her were a little shocked. Previously, when Suitsun was serving the old madam, she kept a low profile and didn't leave her room. She had never seen these people before. Now that she saw the people outside, she couldn't recognize most of them. Only the village committee director, who had bullied her family in the past, was someone she recognized. The memory was too deep. It was impossible to forget. She looked at them and said, "What's wrong with you? Why are you here?" When she saw Suitsun, she felt a little guilty, because everyone knew that she was the old madam's daughter. In terms of inheritance, she would definitely be the most powerful. However, Suitsun's household registration showed that she had died a long time ago. Who are you?" The village chief had an idea and asked. Chapter 10:10. Suitsun harumphed. "Director, I've lived here for more than 10 years. Don't you recognize me?" "Huh? What? What do you mean by more than 10 years? Who are you?" Suitsun walked down the stairs step by step. The few of them were so frightened by Suitsun that they wanted to retreat, but they were stopped by the village director's gaze. They were men. Why would they be afraid of Suitsun? Suitsun came down and said, "Look carefully. Don't you recognize me? But I haven't forgotten you. I haven't forgotten how you embezzled our family's food and almost starved us to death in the winter." Her smile was a little sinister. Although she was still beautiful, there was a hint of hatred in her eyes. The village chief was used to acting like a tyrant here. He had relatives in town and in the city. Hence, after being the village chief for so many years, he even had a few plots of land. His family had built a 6-story building, and no one could control him. Suitsun said, "I haven't forgotten how you made my parents mow the grass in the early spring. They didn't get paid at all. They worked for nothing and were beaten and scolded by you. I haven't forgotten how you forced me to marry someone when I was still underage. When I refused, you pointed at my nose and scolded me." Lin Che was even more furious as he listened. How could this person be so evil? His mother had suffered even more than he had when she was young. Lin Che looked at his mother with heartache. He felt that his mother must be stronger than him to be able to survive until now. The people from the village committee looked at Suitsun, feeling guilty. But the village director didn't think so. He harumphed and looked at Suitsun. Who would remember these old things? Moreover, you're not Suitsun. Why are you pretending? He was prepared. He took out the household registration information and said, "Look, old madam's daughter, Suitsun, died a long time ago. You're not Suitsun at all." Suitsun pursed her lips and stood there, glaring angrily at this greedy man. How could such a person live until now without anyone getting rid of him? Lin Che walked over to Suitsun. "Mom, forget it. There's no need to talk to this kind of person. If he still had a conscience, he wouldn't be like this after so many years." "You." The village director looked at the mother and daughter. Their family's genes were really good, and their daughter was so beautiful, very similar to her mother in the past. Now, she has even become a big star. She's really promising. Unfortunately, so what if you were a superstar? Here, he was the local tyrant. He didn't care who you were. The village director chuckled as he looked at Lin Che. "Let me tell you, don't think that just because you're famous, you can act like a tyrant wherever you go. Over here, the emperor is far away. Even if you're the emperor, you still have to lower your head here. Don't you dare behave atrociously here. Otherwise, I won't give you any face." Lin Che found it hard to imagine how a village director could have the nerve to say such arrogant words. Perhaps it was because the emperor was far away that there were so many weird and arrogant people. The village director said, "Don't be so arrogant in front of me. If you dare to do anything, I'll go out and announce that you're abusing your power in our village. You're making money from land, building your own mansion, and even coming here to be the boss. When that happens, I'll see what you can do about it." He knew that public figures were most afraid of these scandals, so they didn't dare to do anything. Lin Shay looked at this clown and didn't say anything. Then, he heard the doctor running out of the room. Miss Lin, it's bad. The old lady can't take it anymore." Lin Shay and Sutsun were shocked when they heard that. They couldn't be bothered with the village director anymore. They hurriedly walked into the room. The old lady on the bed seemed to move slightly. Lin Shay and Sutsun leaned over the bed together. Lin Shay touched his grandmother's hand. "Grandma." Sutsun also called out, "Mom, we're back." Her hand seemed to move again. She gently touched Lin Shay and Sutsun's hands. It was a very heartwarming sight that made one's heart feel warm. Sutsun said calmly, "Mom, I haven't been able to be filial to you in this life. In the next life, I'll still be your daughter." Lin Shay saw a tear trickle down his grandmother's wrinkled face. However, the corner of her lips was curved into a smile. Lin Shay held her hand even more tightly. "Grandma, Grandma." On the machine beside them, the heartbeat slowly slowed down until it became a straight line. In the end, his grandmother had finally completed her arduous life. Lin Shay also shed tears. He looked at his grandmother and stroked the wrinkles on her face reluctantly. Everyone said that his grandmother had passed away peacefully. Her face looked very peaceful and not ferocious at all. Some people might not even be able to tell how they really looked when they passed away, but the old lady still looked like her in the end. It was obvious that she wasn't in pain. These were naturally words of comfort for those who were still alive. However, after hearing these words, Lin Shay felt a little more comforted in his heart. Gu Jingze was there to help with the funeral arrangements. Because the old lady was a simple person, she didn't have many belongings even though her life had become better. Her grave was chosen outside the village. Gu Jingze spent money to buy a large piece of land and planted fruit trees around it. Looking down from the hill, one could see a green wheat field. Lin Shay stayed at home to accompany Su Xian. When Gu Jingze came back, Lin Shay went out. He was touched to see that he was travel-worn and busy. "Gu Jingze, you're the president of the Gu family. Why are you here to help with the funeral?" Gu Jingze held her hand and said, "Silly girl, your grandmother is my grandmother too. That's different. Some families were like this. At times like this, it was easy to see the difference. Some sons-in-law would treat their mother's family's business as his own, while others would hide in a corner and ignore it if it didn't concern them." Lin Shay had never experienced this before, but he had heard many people talk about it. However, Gu Jingze never differentiated between them. He would always say, "Your business is my business." Lin Shay said, "This time, it will probably be delayed for a few more days. That scoundrel still sends people to watch over us. We're so annoying." If it weren't for the fact that he would be busy with the funeral and wanted his grandmother to pass away peacefully, he wouldn't have cared about them for the past few days. Gu Jingze said, "Don't worry. They've been arrogant for a few days." Lin Shay said, "Tell me, how can such a person be a director?" Gu Jingze said, "These small places have their own rules." "But isn't this a problem? Can I report it to Mr. President?" Gu Jingze raised his eyebrows. "Of course you can. You can call him Mr. President now." "Wow, that's too petty. Forget it. When a matter is settled, I'll talk to Min first and let him have some pillow talk." Chapter 10:11. Gu Jingze smiled. Lin Shay looked pleased as she looked at him and said, "Seems like it's good to know the higher-ups." "Yeah, the people you know aren't just ordinary higher-ups. Yeah, top-notch ones. They must be scared shitless if they find out. But this does need to be rectified. I'll call Big Brother later. Although it's a border town and it's hard to control some local tyrants, I can't just sit back and do nothing since I've met them. I'll take this opportunity to rectify the situation." Lin Shay said, "Really? That's great. I want to see what happens to such a person. Big Brother has been dealing with too many things. He can't deal with such trivial matters. Moreover, he hasn't been here personally, so he won't know. That's why he's been running amok for so many years." Lin Che said indignantly. I just think about how he treated our family. My mother, grandmother, and grandfather were bullied by him for so many years, and now he's so greedy that he wants the house and land that grandmother left behind. We bought it to show our filial piety to grandmother. We won't give it to someone like him. Don't worry. We won't give him the house. We'll deal with him when the time comes. Yeah, the most important thing now is to settle grandmother's funeral. Actually, no matter what a person did after death was futile. However, they still wanted their grandmother to die with dignity. They wanted people to remember that her life was complete and complete. Sutsun's health wasn't good. She had been too sad these few days and had been recuperating inside. Lin Che couldn't move around too much in case she was pregnant. It wouldn't be good if something happened to her. Thus, Gu Jingze had to do everything outside. Gu Jingze was very meticulous, so the two women didn't need to worry about him. Sutsun felt happy for her daughter as she watched Gu Jingze busying himself with work. She looked at Lin Che and said, Jingze treats you very well. Lin Che said, Yeah, he treats me very well. Sutsun sighed. It's hard to meet such a good man in years. You're very lucky, Xiao Che. Lin Che nodded and looked outside, deep in thought. Yeah, I'm really lucky to have everything I have now. Sutsun held her hand and said, A person's luck is related to the person. It's because you're a good person that you're lucky. Do you understand? Lin Che leaned into Sutsun's embrace. You're a mother, so it's good for you to look after your own child. Sutsun stroked her hair and said, Yes, you're my daughter. In my eyes, you're the best in everything. Sutsun smiled and said, But I'm also really envious of you, little Che. You've accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish in the past, but I couldn't. You become successful, you become independent, and you even have a man who loves you wholeheartedly. Mommy is really happy. Sutsun was really satisfied with Gu Jingze. She felt that it was really not easy for him to achieve what he had done. She gradually felt more at ease with Lin Che. In the future, Lin Che would definitely do better than her. The funeral prepared by Gu Jingze was very reasonable according to the etiquette here. It was not very grand, but it was warm and appropriate, so that everyone could pay their respects to this loyal old man. The people in the village had long known that Lin Che was her maternal granddaughter, and they had always been very envious of her for having such a promising granddaughter. She could live in a big house and even hire a nanny to take care of her. Now that they saw Lin Che and the others coming back to send the old man off for the last time, they couldn't help but sigh. Life was good after all. She was already old, but she was enjoying life instead. In the past, because their family was poor, everyone often laughed at her family. Later on, even her own daughter ran away and never came back. She was the only daughter in their family. After leaving home, she didn't feel like home anymore, which made people feel even more pity for her. Now that they thought about it, they felt that everything was fated and that everything was predestined. On that day, everything had been prepared. The hall was also ready for everyone to see the old man for the last time. She lay in a crystal coffin, her face serene, for everyone to pay their respects. The people who came and saw that this funeral was different from the ones in their village. It looked very grand. Although it wasn't very lively, it made people feel very solemn and respectful, and their respect for the old man increased. Someone was discussing, although people are blowing trumpets and making it seem very grand, it's actually boring. Why don't we just quietly let everyone think about the person who passed away? That's right. These people these days, funerals are getting worse and worse. They make it seem like a joyous occasion. It's so messy. Isn't that so? The people in the city are really cultured. Look at the funerals that they made. The flowers used in the funeral were all freshly harvested. White chrysanthemums were placed all around, and the hall was filled with the smell of chrysanthemums. It made people feel very fresh and elegant, just like the old man lying inside. Although she was already old and lifeless, she still gave people a very elegant feeling. Sigh. After working hard for a lifetime, I finally don't have to work hard anymore. There were people who were familiar with her. When they saw her old tears, they knew that they weren't far from each other. They felt even more emotional. They were like old sisters, saying intimate words to her. Lin Shay and Suitsun stood at the side and bowed to the people who came. Suitsun was still crying uncontrollably. Looking at such a scene, she naturally couldn't take it anymore. No matter how strong she was, she still felt terrible. This was the last time that everyone would accompany her. In the future, she would no longer have a mother. This was the last time she would see her mother's face. In the future, they would be separated forever. When she grew old, she might even forget how her mother looked like. The people who came looked at Suitsun and were stunned. This Suitsun was indeed the prettiest girl in the village. Now that she was standing there, she still had an air of nobility about her, making people feel that she was indescribably noble. Lin Shay, who was standing at the side, was even more beautiful. The people who came consoled Suitsun, saying, "Don't cry, girl. Your mother has been living a good life all these years. She should be very satisfied with her death." Suitsun smiled with tears in her eyes. "It's all because of Lin Shay. I'm actually an unfilial daughter." "How could that be? I heard that you also escaped from death. This is all fate." "Sigh. When I saw you back then, I felt that you weren't an ordinary person. What you did wasn't ordinary either. Look, you're indeed successful. In our village, your family is the most successful." The people who came were really envious. In their eyes, being able to walk out of this village was already considered successful. However, in the past few years, most of the people who could walk out of the village were working. Only Suitsun returned with such a successful life. Hence, everyone was naturally very convinced. Chapter 10-12. Looking at Suitsun and her mother, they truly felt that their child was amazing. Indeed, if one wanted to be successful, one had to boldly walk out of the village. Back then, when Suitsun ran away, many of them thought that they would like to see what kind of success she would have after running away from home and being disobedient. Many of those who had failed in their marriage proposals also thought that they would like to see what kind of husband Suitsun would find in the future. Now, even though they didn't know what kind of husband Suitsun had found, they knew that he was definitely not an ordinary man, seeing how noble she was now. Thus, everyone forgot how they had mocked her behind her back. Now that she had returned to the village in glory, they could only sigh. It was better to go out and have a future. Suitsun smiled as she looked at the people who used to be her fellow villagers. Now, they were unrecognizable. She said, "Thank you, everyone, for taking care of my mother all these years. It's fine, it's fine. Your family is full of good people. That's why you have such good fortune. You're also a good person. That's why you're so blessed. Aya, this Lin Shay is really pretty. I heard he's a big star." Lin Shay smiled and replied, "That's all. Thank you for the compliment." Most of them said the same thing, and Lin Shay was getting a little numb as she listened to them. Looking at her grandmother, she thought to herself, "This is life. When you come, it's lively. When you leave, it's lively. But at this moment, suddenly a sound came from outside. When everyone heard it, they knew that the village chief had arrived. Lin Shay frowned. These people were really too much. They couldn't even let her have a proper funeral. She stood there and said angrily, "Seriously, Mom, wait here." Suitsun said, "Don't go over. Your body can't take it. Take a look first." Lin Shay said, "Don't worry, Mom. I have people watching me. They can't touch me." What a joke. She was surrounded by the Gu family's personal guards. It would be difficult for these people to touch her. However, when the villagers saw this, they hurriedly pulled Suitsun and said, "You're a girl. Don't fight them head on." Suitsun said, "I know, Annie. It's just that they've gone overboard today. My mother's body hasn't even turned cold yet, but they're not letting us bury her properly." The villagers said in a low voice, "You guys don't know this, but he's become more powerful in recent years. I heard that his sister married a high-ranking official in the city. His relatives are everywhere from the city to the town, so no one dares to do anything to him. Since ancient times, commoners don't fight with officials. We'd better stay away from him. In the past, there were people who wanted to fight him in court, but in the end, they couldn't beat him." Lin Shay snorted and said, "This local bully is indeed powerful." When the villagers heard her say it so straightforwardly, although it was the truth, they were still scared. "You guys are from the outside, so you don't know. If he hears this, he might get angry and cause trouble again. Look, the whole village respects him. Who dares to offend him? Lin Che looked at Suitsun and said, "It's okay, Mom. Let me go over and take a look. He can't hurt me." Suitsun was still worried, but Lin Che had already patted the back of her hand to comfort her. He then walked over first. Outside, as expected, a few people had already pulled up the curtains at the side with great fanfare. The villagers had actually prepared their own things to hold a funeral for the old lady. However, they didn't expect Gu Jingze to make the funeral so high-end. He had built an auditorium, a crystal coffin, and a memorial service. It looked like a funeral for an official. This made their funeral seem even more extravagant. It was originally just for show. They pulled up a blue curtain, and inside it were wreaths and black and white photos. They even set up a Swana team outside. Seeing that they had come out, the village director immediately said, "Play it for me." The sound of the Swana was loud, and it was irritating to hear. Lin Che walked over and said, "Don't go too far." Seeing the young lady like Lin Che had actually walked over by herself, the few people became even more unbridled. The village director said, "You didn't bring a man with you. Let the man handle this. Don't interfere." Lin Che said, "My man doesn't have to care about these small matters." Letting Gu Jingze handle these hooligans was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. She couldn't bear to let Gu Jingze come up. The village director looked at her with his slightly bulging belly and laughed mockingly. "Lin Che, don't think that I won't dare to mess with you just because you're a celebrity. Humph, I see that you're educated and know the law. The old lady is from our village, and we have the obligation to hold a funeral for her. Don't be in such a hurry to hold a funeral. It's as if you're really the old lady's relatives. Even if you hold a funeral, the house won't be yours." The Swana continued playing. The sound made Lin Che feel disgusted. She hated that they were causing trouble here and making her grandmother unable to rest in peace. She narrowed her eyes and looked around. Then, she ordered the people behind her, "I don't want to hear such noise." This order was enough. A few bodyguards immediately walked over. The village director saw what these people were going to do. He rolled up his sleeves, put his hands on his waist, and said rudely, "You want to use force? Let me tell you, the whole village is my people. If you want to fight, we'll fight together. You won't be able to get away with it." He even called out to the people behind him, wanting them to fight directly. But unexpectedly, a few men had already gone forward. They grabbed the Swana and threw on the ground. The village director laughed and said, "How dare you?" With that, he ordered the men to fight together. The villagers inside immediately felt that things were going to get worse. After all, Lin Che was still young and too impulsive. How could he let these people fight? When that happened, Lin Che would definitely not have a good time. But unexpectedly, after the few of them went up together, the people behind the village director surrounded them. Unfortunately, they couldn't beat him even though they were ganging up on him. He easily overturned all of them on the ground. The villagers watched from behind and were surprised. What kind of people did Lin Che bring? You don't understand. They're bodyguards. Big celebrities always have bodyguards behind them. Bodyguards are so powerful. Of course, they spend a lot of money to hire them. They're definitely more powerful than us ordinary people. Beating us ordinary people is like playing a game to them. But Lin Che won't have a good time offending the village director. The director has people above him. Don't let the police come and arrest him later. Indeed, the person who was beaten up unsteadily made the village director furious. He pointed at Lin Che and said, You still dare to hit people. You really don't want to live anymore. Just you wait." Lin Che said, "There's still one more person. I don't want to see this person either. Throw him away." A few bodyguards immediately walked towards the village director. The village director's face was no longer as arrogant as before. He looked a little scared as he retreated. He pointed at Lin Che and scolded, "You dare to let people hit me. Do you still want to walk out of this village? You. But Lin Che was really that daring. When the village director saw this, he immediately turned around and ran away. Chapter 10:13. The villagers didn't expect Lin Che to actually dare to hit the village director. For a moment, there was a lot of discussion going on behind them. Some were sighing in admiration. They didn't think that the village chief would have such a day. He deserved it. They felt that Lin Che had done the right thing. However, there were also many people who were worried. They felt that the village chief was a bad person and had great power. He would definitely come back for revenge. Would Lin Che be able to take it then? Suitsen watched from behind. She wasn't worried at all. The villagers advised Suitsen, "Don't fight with him. Your daughter is promising, but that guy is really powerful. You know that. He bullied your family a lot in the past." Suitsen smiled. "It's okay. Lin Che can handle it." Of course, she knew that Gu Jingze and Lin Che were important people. A mere village director couldn't do anything to them. They must have their own plans for not punishing him now. She didn't ask too much. She trusted Gu Jingze 100%. After the person was beaten away, everyone arranged the funeral. At the top of the mountain, the few of them also felt sad for a while as they watched the grave rise up high. Gu Jingze had already returned. He looked at Lin Che and walked over to hug her. "Are you okay?" Lin Che nodded. "They've been beaten away. They really came to cause trouble today." "Yeah, but he was humiliated by you. He'll definitely think of ways to take revenge. Even though he's a local tyrant, you have to be careful. I'll get someone to follow you." A misty rain fell from the sky, adding a bit of sadness to this kind of day. After everyone returned, as the hosts, they had to treat the villagers to a meal. Suitsen also chatted with the people she knew in the past. On the other side, the village director was furious. The person was buried just like that. The methods he used in the past didn't work this time. Lin Che was also fearless and arrogant. He thought that it was because she was a celebrity and felt that she had power, so she wasn't afraid of him. But today, many people had seen him running away in panic. Now, it was no longer a problem of the house or the land. It was a problem that he had to vent his anger. He immediately called his brother-in-law and cried, saying that a big celebrity came here and beat him up. She even stole the village's land. Lin Che sat in a restaurant and had a simple meal. Because her grandmother had just passed away, she didn't have much to eat. However, due to her health, she still ate a little so that the child in her stomach wouldn't be able to take it. Outside, the town's residents, who knew that Lin Che was here, surrounded the restaurant. There were people everywhere holding their phones, wanting to take pictures. The bodyguard at the door didn't allow anyone to take photos because Gu Jingze was still there. He never allowed anyone to take photos. The people outside looked inside curiously. To them, many of them had never seen a celebrity in their entire lives. This time, they found a chance to see what a celebrity looked like. They weren't her fans in the first place and couldn't say that they really liked her, but they still wanted to take a picture of her so that they could post it for others to see and show off. Now, that Lin Che didn't allow them to take a picture. Everyone was still complaining, saying that he actually didn't allow them to take a picture. Lin Che looked outside. He felt that it was getting more and more difficult to go out. There were people everywhere. In the future, when his stomach got bigger, it would be better for him to go out less. However, at this moment, a few people outside pushed aside the people in the town and directly rushed in. There were a few police officers following behind them. It seemed that they had come in with something, looking like they were doing official business. Lin Che immediately stood up. Gu Jingze stood in front of him, looked at the people and asked, "What's the matter?" When the people who were eating behind saw that the police had come, they all panicked. They thought to themselves, "I've already said that the village chief wouldn't let this matter go." Indeed, he was right. The people who came in immediately sized up the people inside. "We suspect that you have an illegal gathering." Gu Jingze looked at them and said, "Where's the evidence? Why are there so many people outside? You even brought so many thugs here to cause trouble in the village and steal other people's land." He harumphed. There was a kind of discrimination in his eyes. He felt that outsiders coming to their territory to cause trouble definitely deserved to be beaten up. "Go, disperse for me." A few people who seemed to be the leaders of some triad started to chase people out of the room. Gu Jingze didn't move and let them cause trouble. The security guard at the side all listened to Gu Jingze's orders. Without Gu Jingze's orders, they stood there and didn't move. When the villagers saw this, they thought that they saw that the police were here, so they didn't dare to move. These people definitely didn't dare to provoke the police, so some of them hurriedly ran away. The police behind them also came up and said to them, "Someone has reported that you guys are causing trouble in the village. Come with us for a while." Lin Che looked at the people in front. Causing trouble? They're the ones causing trouble, right? The police said, "They're the ones causing trouble. Why didn't you guys call the police instead of them? You guys are definitely the ones causing trouble, so you guys don't dare to call the police." Huh, what kind of gangster logic is this? It's like when a person on the side of the road was hit by a car, and someone went to help him up, but someone else said that it must have been you who hit him. Otherwise, why would you help him up? This is the same kind of gangster logic. Lin Che said, "They were the ones causing trouble first. I won't go back with you guys. Please leave quickly. Today is my grandmother's funeral. I don't want to cause trouble." The police looked at Lin Che and thought that he had never seen such a beautiful celebrity before. Hence, he wanted to take the opportunity to arrest him. But before he could touch Lin Che, Gu Jingze, with his sharp eyes and nimble hands, had already pressed that perverted pig's hand down and pressed it back. He was pressed to the ground and cried out in pain. He couldn't help but raise his head and shout, "Aya, you're assaulting a police officer." He was in so much pain that he started screaming. Gu Jingze gave him a look, and the security guard inside immediately moved out and surrounded the people inside. The police were a little confused. What were these people trying to do? How dare they go against the police? Gu Jingze, on the other hand, was ruthless. They really didn't want to live if they dared to touch Lin Che. "All right, you guys know who sent us here. You guys dare to hit people like this, even the police. I think you guys must be tired of living." Gu Jingze looked at the person he had pressed down and said, "Oh, tell me, who sent you here?" "Our deputy Mayor Chen personally gave the order." "Oh, I'd like to meet this person." Gu Jingze said, "Then is there someone else above him?" "Hi, you're right. There is indeed someone above him." "Why? Do you want to know? Come with me to the police station. You'll know immediately what you've done." Just then, a police siren suddenly rang outside the door. Chapter 10:14. When the policemen heard the siren, they said proudly, "Just you wait. Our backup is here." The person who got out of the car outside was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. He quickly shook his clothes after getting out of the car. Then he walked directly into the restaurant with a serious face. The police officer raised his head and was still in a daze. The man wasn't the mayor or the deputy mayor. He wasn't were they high-ranking officials? The policemen were stunned. Even the high-ranking officials were alerted by this incident? Or could it be that they even knew high-ranking officials? High-ranking officials, high-ranking officials. These are the people who are causing trouble. A policeman ran over. The high-ranking official didn't even look at the people inside. He saw Gu Jingze and quickly walked over with his head lowered. He quickly walked up to him and said respectfully without raising his head, "Mr. Gu, I'm late." Everyone present was stunned. Gu Jingze looked at him and said, "You're not late. You came at the right time. You can see how lively my place is now. Look, it's just a funeral and so many people are here to join the fun. I wonder how the old lady would feel when she sees so many people worrying about her funeral." The high-ranking official heard the sarcasm in his words and was horrified. He said to Gu Jingze, "I'm really surprised that there's such an evil tyrant controlling an entire town. Nobody told me about this. I'm usually very busy and neglected to discipline him. It's all my fault. Mr. Gu, I hope you can see me redeem myself. This kind of thing will never happen again." Gu Jingze looked out of the window. "If this happened to me, I can solve it. Of course, I won't take it seriously. But if it happened to an ordinary person, wouldn't that mean that the land would be taken away by others?" The high-ranking official raised his eyebrows and said, "Yes, yes, yes." Gu Jingze said, "I've already reported this matter to the parliament. They will send someone to take care of it. I hope you don't mind." He had already told the higher-ups that, but for someone like Gu Jingze, even the president was his brother. It was inevitable that he would inform the higher-ups. It could only be said that these people were blind to provoke Gu Jingze. "Yes, yes, that's what we should do," the senior official said. Because although this is a small matter for me, for the people, there is no small matter in life. I feel that it is only right for the higher-ups to rectify this matter. Yes, you're right. The people inside were quiet, seeing that the high-ranking official was still bowing to him like a subordinate who was being reprimanded. They lost their confidence and felt like a deflated balloon that could no longer be held up. The senior official turned around and looked at the policemen standing there. Go back, all of you. Arrest all the troublemakers while you're at it. Set up a special task force to investigate this matter. He was able to become a high-ranking official because he wasn't an ordinary person. He was capable, but this was how it was in this circle. There were too many things to handle, and he had to delegate them to others. He couldn't handle so many things by himself. Sometimes he would turn a blind eye to things that he didn't think were too important. As long as the people below didn't cause any trouble, he wouldn't interfere too much. When the time came, he would be able to achieve great results in the financial sector. That was what he wanted to do. Unfortunately, this time, someone had walked right into the line of fire. This time, he was afraid that something big was going to happen. Once the parliament got involved, they would probably have to investigate the atmosphere here. The group of people looked on dejectedly. Some were arrested and some were sent back. On the other side, Suitsun stood behind Lin Che as she watched the scene unfold. She said to her, "Was Jingza already prepared?" Lin Che nodded. Yes, he said that he could take the opportunity to rectify the situation. That was why she dared to cause such a ruckus today. She wanted to expose the higher-ups. Now that the police, the villagers, and the government were all involved, it was impossible for the higher-ups to hide and not care about it. The villagers outside finally reacted to what had just happened. It turned out that the people from the province had come to personally take care of these matters. How powerful must they be? Originally, they had been living in darkness with the city covering the sky with one hand. Now that the people from the province had come, it seemed that their village chief couldn't hide anymore. They finally understood why Lin Che dared to hit people like that. It turned out that he didn't care about the power of the few people in the village committee. This time, their village chief had kicked a steel plate. Let's see if he still dared to be so stubborn. Gu Jingzi said, "All right, you can continue with your meal. This matter is settled. Leave the rest to the higher-ups to settle." Lin Che nodded. I didn't think that Grandma's death would cause such a huge commotion. It's really, Suitsun said, forget it. If we can use this incident to get rid of a tumor in the village, your grandma will be very happy. Lin Che sighed and looked at Suitsun's mom. It's really good that you were able to leave back then. Suitsun smiled. Back then, I just couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept being bullied here. If I had stayed and not left, I might have ended up like your grandmother for the rest of my life. At the end of the day, I'm actually very grateful to Lu Qinyu. He let me know what the outside world is like and gave me the courage to make a choice. Speaking of which, it's strange. Many people lack this kind of courage, the courage to change their current situation. That's why they're willing to be ordinary. But actually, once they break through and leave this world, they can still live in another way, right? Lin Che thought that Suitsun was in her prime at that time. She must have been very famous. She was very proud of having such a courageous mother. Meanwhile, the village chief was still at home listening to the news. He didn't expect that a few people would come and seize his house. The village chief was stunned. What are you doing? Your house has been seized. They're now suspecting that you violated the rules and abused your power to bully the villagers. Let's go. What? I want to see my brother-in-law. Do you know who my brother-in-law is? The village chief wanted to make a call immediately. We don't know who your brother-in-law is. You can go to the jail and look for him. He's probably already waiting for you there. Duh. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. What was going on? It's Lin Che, isn't it? She's just a small-time celebrity. How can she have so much power? Then you're wrong. It's not her, it's Mr. Gu. You don't even know who you offended, and you still have the cheek to look for your brother-in-law here. The person who came directly put a pair of handcuffs on him. He was stunned for a long time before he finally made a decision that suddenly he twitched and fell to the ground. He looked like he was having a seizure and said, my illness is acting up. I want to go to the hospital. Chapter 10:15. Gu Jingze had already heard that the village director was sent to the hospital because of a scare. Lin Che said, "Why is he so easily frightened?" Gu Jingze pinched her nose. "Silly girl, he's faking it." Lin Che said, "Yeah, I don't think it's possible for him to fall sick on such a timely basis." Gu Jingze said, "You'll know after a while that it's a trap. If the higher-ups start to investigate, they'll hide in the hospital so that they won't have to go to the police station to be quarantined and investigated. This way, they can still use their connections to smooth things over. Sometimes, if they find the right connections, they won't have to be investigated. However, if they go to the police station and are quarantined, they won't have any chance at all. So when people hear the news, they rush to the hospital." "I see. No wonder," Gu Jingze said. "All right, leave this place to me. We don't have to worry about it for now. Since we have the opportunity to come here, why don't we go out and have a look? Tell me where you want to go and bring your mother along." Lin Che said, "All right then. Why don't we go to the village and take a look at the school here? I want to see the place where my mother went to school, and also the place where she met Uncle Lu." Gu Jingze said, "Okay, I'll go with you." After Grandma's funeral, the village felt as if it had been reborn. Everyone heard that the village director was so frightened that he was sent to the hospital. This time, they were really shocked. Everyone was very happy. For a moment, it was as if an evil force that had been pressing down on them had finally been removed. At this moment, the whole of country C was actually a little shaken because of this incident. This was because Gu Jingming had suddenly decided to reorganize the local government from the beginning. All of a sudden, such a big move shook the whole country. For a moment, many people were dealing with it carefully. Many of them had some problems and quickly started to investigate the people around them. The village director in the hospital wanted to find someone to smooth things over, but it was impossible. No one dared to answer his call. He was anxious, so he called the provincial office. The provincial office said directly, "You've done it. Don't look for anyone else. They can't even take care of themselves. Who cares about you? Do you know how big of a mess you've made?" I just offended someone." "What? Did you become stupid after staying in the hospital? The whole country is investigating because of you. It's true that you offended someone, but what kind of person did you offend? There are people who can make the whole country tremble with a stomp of their feet. In the past, those were just guesses and rumors. Now, you can finally see it. Because you offended someone, the whole country is investigating. Is that a joke? You won't be able to hide this time." The village head was also shocked. How could he have thought that the problem of a house and a piece of land would cause such a big fuss? Gu Jingze was waiting for Lin Che early in the morning. Lin Che wasn't wearing any clothes. Looking at himself in the mirror in the bathroom, he immediately saw his belly. He could actually see a little bump now. Didn't that mean that the child was growing up? In fact, she could already feel that the child was pushing against her organs. Her uterus was growing, so her entire body was uncomfortable. She stared at the mirror. As she stared, she seemed to smell something coming from outside. She directly leaned over the toilet and vomited. Gu Jingze heard the noise and hurriedly walked in. He immediately saw Lin Che vomiting there, looking very uncomfortable. His heart ached, and he hurriedly held her hand and said, "What's wrong, Lin Che?" Lin Che vomited out everything in his stomach and felt very uncomfortable. Gu Jingze immediately brought her a glass of water. Lin Che drank a mouthful and rinsed her mouth before feeling a little better. Gu Jingze looked at her, wishing that he could have worked so hard for her. Unfortunately, he couldn't. Hence, he only hoped that he could find a way to reduce her suffering a little. He looked at Lin Che. "How are you feeling? Do you feel uncomfortable?" Lin Che said, "It's all right. I feel much better after vomiting." Gu Jingze held her hand tightly. Lin Che could see the self-blame in his eyes. She smiled, took his hand, and slowly stroked her belly. Gu Jingze knew her body like the back of his hand. Naturally, he immediately noticed any changes. His eyes moved. "Is it a little bigger?" Lin Che couldn't hide her excitement. Although it was already her second child, she still felt that it was very novel. She didn't know what this child would look like. Would it look like her or Gu Jingze? When Yin Yin was born, she looked more like her father. She could tell at a glance that Gu Jingze was the model. However, as she slowly grew up, her genes finally showed a little, and slowly, Nian Nian began to look like her. As a result, he was now a combination of the two of them. He looked like Gu Jingze, but also like her. Therefore, the creation of a small person was very mysterious. It was possible that he had fused the things of two people together. Lin Che looked at him and said, "Don't worry, I don't feel tired at all. Gu Jingze, I like giving birth to your child." Gu Jingze looked at her. "How is it not tired? You feel so uncomfortable." Lin Che said, "Think about it. Many women feel the same pain when giving birth, but I'm much luckier than them because I'm giving birth to a child for you, who is so good." She thought about how good and outstanding Gu Jingze was and how he doted on her. He was simply a perfect man. She felt that she was so lucky that she was in no position to complain about the hardships. There were too many people who had it harder than her, and she was already very happy. Being able to give birth to a child for the person she loved was already the first happiness she had. Moreover, this child was their common treasure. She only felt anticipation and sweetness in her heart. No matter how hard it was, she felt that it was worth it. She could understand that many people were sad about giving birth, complaining that there was no one to take care of their child, complaining that their husband couldn't help them, and complaining that it was hard on them. However, she didn't feel that way at all because Gu Jingze was really too good to her. Gu Jingze said, "If you say that I'm so good to you, I'll feel a lot of pressure." "How can that be? Shouldn't you be very confident?" "Silly," Gu Jingze said, "I don't have confidence." He pressed against the tip of her nose. "I've never been confident. I only feel that I've never done enough, that I've never been good enough." Lin Che pressed her lips against his, but she felt that his lips were slowly moving towards hers. It was a little warm and romantic. She suddenly remembered that she hadn't rinsed her mouth. She had just vomited and felt that her mouth would be dirty. However, before she could say anything, Gu Jingze had already kissed her lips. Bit by bit, he pushed the tip of his tongue into her mouth and warmed her mouth with his lips and tongue. Chapter 10:16. Gu Jingze's lips were so soft that her worried heart suddenly lost its ability. Being bitten by him, she couldn't help but respond. But this made her feel hotter and hotter. Gu Jingze frowned. If he had known that he wouldn't be able to control himself, he wouldn't have touched her. He used up almost all his strength to move his lips away from hers. He took a deep breath and looked at her. "When a child is born, I will ravage you in bed for 3 days and 3 nights to vent my anger." Lin Che was also panting from a kiss. She looked at Gu Jingze and said, "You're so annoying. Who asked you to be angry?" "It's you, you little thing," he said, biting her nose resentfully. "Ugh." Lin Che was bitten. She groaned and rubbed her nose as she looked at him. But she knew that Gu Jingze was having a hard time holding back, so she had no choice but to kiss him on the cheek as a form of encouragement. Gu Jingze sighed as he looked at her. Lin Che said, "But I was dirty just now. How dare you kiss me?" Gu Jingze asked, "How was I dirty? I vomited just now. Didn't I rinse my mouth?" "That's true. Don't you dislike it?" Gu Jingze said, "Why would I dislike it? You don't like it. Does my mouth stink?" "Why would it, silly?" He lowered his head and sniffed her body. For some reason, she smelled good even though she didn't put on anything this morning. It was as if there was a fragrance coming from his body. It smelled really good. Gu Jingze said, "No, your body smells good. It's very fragrant." It was so fragrant that she couldn't help but want to smell it again. Lin Che asked curiously, "Do I smell good?" She lowered her head and raised her hand to smell herself, but she couldn't smell anything. Gu Jingze said, "Silly, what can you smell? You can't smell what you smell every day." Lin Che said, "Aren't you by my side every day? How can you smell it?" "Yeah, I can't smell it when I'm always around. But once I leave for a while, you still smell good when I come back," Gu Jingze said. Lin Che was even more puzzled. "But I didn't put anything on. Is it the smell of shower gel?" "Perhaps, but it doesn't look like it," he said. In fact, he didn't think it was any kind of spice, but it seemed to be her scent, the so-called fragrance of a girl. Lin Che shrugged. "All right, I think." Maybe that saying is true. Always using cosmetics has caused the taste to grow. Duh. This woman had the ability to ruin all romance. Forget it. Now is not the time to talk about this. Seeing that Lin Che looked better, he said, "The car is ready. Let's go." All right. They had planned to visit Suits in school today. Suitsun was already waiting outside. Seeing that the two of them had yet to come out, she did not rush them. It was a good thing that they were so sweet together. She felt very happy just by looking at them. What was there to rush? Suitsun looked at Gu Jingze, who was standing beside Lin Che. The more she looked at him, the more she felt that he was a good match for Lin Che. It was strange that such a good-looking boy was so nice. She had never believed in fate in the past, but gradually she began to believe in it. Now, she was even more convinced. She felt that it must be fate that made Lin Che make up for her regrets in the past by meeting such a good man. If that was the case, she felt a lot more relieved. At least she had made up for everything she lacked with her daughter. That was enough. They drove for 2 hours to the school. The place looked very shabby. From afar, they could hear the voices of children reading aloud. The crisp voice of a child made one's heart weak. Lin Che did not know if it was because she was pregnant, but she was very sensitive. Hearing these words and seeing the poverty here, she began to feel sad. Suitsun said, "Look, it's still the same. It's dirty, but this is the only school around here." The few of them got out of the car. The few luxurious cars were especially eye-catching. Lin Che got out of the car and felt even more upset. He looked at the teacher teaching in the dilapidated classroom, and the children learning so seriously, as if they were doing their best to fight against poverty, to fight against the hardship of life. Lin Che sighed and said, "I really want to help them." Gu Jingze looked at her. "Really?" Lin Che raised her head. "Yeah, I don't feel good otherwise." Gu Jingze lowered his brows and thought for a moment. He snapped his fingers and called someone over. When his people came over, he said something to them in a low voice. Lin Che looked at him, not knowing what he was saying. But after a while, she found out. The principal of the school hurried over. When he saw Lin Che, Gu Jingze, and Suitsun standing there, he was extremely shocked. Because of the incident of beating up the officials, they were now very famous, especially Lin Che. Everyone did not know who Gu Jingze was, but they all knew Lin Che. Of course, everyone thought that they were heroes who had helped them eradicate evil, so they liked them a lot. "Welcome, Miss Lin. You're such a nice person. Don't worry, if you really donate to our school and make it a Hope Primary School, we'll immediately change the name to Hope Primary School after you." "Huh?" Lin Che looked up at Gu Jingze in surprise. Gu Jingze raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Didn't you say that you wanted to help them? Then have you decided to donate here?" Lin Che asked. Gu Jingze said, "Yeah. Actually, donating to a school didn't cost much. The Gu Corporation would also donate some money every year." Lin Che said, "That's great, but don't use my name. It feels weird." The principal had wanted these celebrities to donate some money to the school for charity. Didn't they just want to be famous? Why didn't she want it? Lin Che said, "We're just donating some money in a low-key manner. There's no need to be so ostentatious. You can call yourselves whatever you want. There's no need to change your names." "Aya, Miss Lin is such a good person. You do a good deed without leaving your name. We really should learn from you." No. Please don't say that." Gu Jingze asked someone to follow the principal to settle the paperwork. Lin Che and Gu Jingze stood there. Gu Jingze lowered his head and said, "Why don't you use your name?" Lin Che shook her head. "Why do you have to use my name? It feels weird. Also, putting my name on the signboard and hanging it up. That's too weird. Forget it. Duh. This girl's imagination was really strange. However, Gu Jingze knew that she wasn't the kind of person who would fish for fame. Feeling his passionate gaze, she looked at him and said, "Why are you staring at me? Look at my silly girl. Why is she so kind?" This was a pure and kind fool. However, it was also because of this that it was so hard to part with her. Chapter 10:17. At first, he thought that she was very vain. However, that kind of vanity was so straightforward that he couldn't hate her. Later on, he felt that she said that she liked money but she wasn't greedy. She liked vanity, but she wasn't greedy either. She liked beauty. Oh, she seemed to be greedy. He liked the way she lusted after his beauty. In short, in the beginning, he didn't even know if it was because he liked her that he thought everything about her was good, or because she was so good that he liked her so much. When the students in the school heard that a big star had come to donate money, they all ran out and looked at Lin Che. Although the students didn't go out much, it was a modern society after all. They still watched TV. Reality shows were the students' favorite, so they were familiar with Lin Che. When they saw her, they immediately surrounded her and blocked the entrance passionately. Lin Che wasn't being pretentious. It was just that her body couldn't handle any accidents, so she didn't get too close. The teacher asked the excited students to move back and give Lin Che some space. The teachers often heard that celebrities did charity, but they couldn't get any. They didn't expect that a celebrity would really come to their school to do charity. It didn't matter if it was true or not. It was good to see the celebrity and join the fun. Some people even said that they were pretending to donate money and then taking it back. But other people said that the principal said that they were really here to do something. They'd already contacted people to build the school. They did not donate money directly. They had directly spent money to build new classrooms and facilities. They had even installed air conditioners and heaters. In the future, the school's learning environment would definitely be better. They would also be able to find better teachers to teach them. Gu Jing's thoughts were more comprehensive. He felt that if he directly donated the money, who knew where the money would be used and whether it would be used on the ground? It would be better to build something that could be seen, touched, and known how much it would cost. The money would be spent wisely, and the students could really benefit from it. It was the first time that the students had seen such a good-looking person. They had thought that people on TV would be different from people in real life. Many people on the internet had said that many celebrities were ugly in real life, but Lin Che was very good-looking in real life. It was especially breathtaking. Lin Che didn't stay for long. She greeted everyone and let them go to class. Gu Jingze pulled Lin Che and said, "Let's go. I'll show you around." Lin Che turned around to look at Su Xian. Of course, Su Xian didn't mind. She looked at the two of them and said, "All right, you guys go ahead. I'll walk around here." Su Xian liked to see the two of them being inseparable and always being so lovey-dovey. It was a blissful sight. Seeing her daughter so happy, she felt happy from the bottom of her heart. Lin Che let Gu Jingze pull her along and walk to the back. The weather here was really good. There was no smog, no pollution, the sky was blue, the grass was green, and the stream was tinkling. As Lin Che walked, Gu Jingze carefully held his hand. She said, "It's really beautiful here." Gu Jingze said, "If you want, we can keep Grandma's house. You can stay here for a while when you come back. You can also come back to visit Grandma whenever you want." "Ah, is that okay? But the house will be ruined if it's just left there. If no one lived in the house, it would be easy for it to get damaged." Gu Jingze said, "I'll ask someone to keep an eye on it. Ah, it's so expensive. Leaving a memory is more important than anything else." He smiled as he held her hand and walked forward step by step. Lin Che thought that if the two of them could grow old together, they would come back to live here again. Thinking about it, it was really a very happy thing. It was probably because you met the right person. That is to say, you always feel that you haven't had enough of him in this life, and you want to continue living with him in the next life. However, you are very worried that you won't be able to meet him in the next life. So in this life, you have already started to worry about the next life that after staying here for a few days, Lin Che and Gu Jingze finally set off for home. Su Xian also wanted to go back to Country M. She drove for a few hours with Gu Jingze to watch a few shows, and then took the Gu family's plane back. Gu Jingze held Lin Che's hand. Before they got on the plane, they heard a call from home, saying that the old master was critically ill. Gu Jingze picked up the phone. When he heard the words on the other end, his expression immediately turned serious. "Really? I understand. I'm rushing back now." Lin Che noticed that Gu Jing's expression suddenly seemed to bear the weight of his daughter. She was a little surprised for a moment. She looked at Gu Jingze and asked, "What's wrong?" Gu Jingze put down the phone and looked ahead. "Grandfather is critically ill." "What? Lin Shae's heart skipped a beat. Lin Shae said in surprise, "Why? Is it very serious?" Although she no longer respected Gu Xianda as much as she did in the past, the old master was critically ill. If something really happened, she was afraid that there would be chaos again, and she really didn't want to see chaos now. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Shae and said, "I'm not sure yet. It's not the first time that grandfather has been critically ill. The last time he was suddenly critically ill, he was saved by the doctors in the end. After the surgery, he survived for a while, but his body isn't very good." Lin Shae sighed. "All right then. Nothing else will happen to him, right?" Gu Jingze said, "I don't want anything to happen to him now." He hugged Lin Shae and said, "I still want to spend more time with you, with Nian Yin, and with the child in your belly. If grandfather really can't make it this time, I will definitely have to busy myself." Lin Shae nodded. Gu Jingze said, "Go to the Gu family home first." Is grandfather recuperating at the Gu family home? Since he's critically ill, isn't he in the hospital? This kind of news can't be spread outside. In order to treat grandfather's illness, we have already set up a special room at home for him to treat his illness. They have already sent a plane overseas to pick up the doctor. Lin Shae nodded. Listening to these things, his heart was in a mess. He only felt that as he grew older, he had to accept the departure of all kinds of people around him. There were good and bad, intimacy and hatred. However, this kind of feeling still made him feel a little melancholy. They arrived at City B and went straight to the Gu family home. From the outside, the Gu family home looked the same. There was nothing unusual about it. However, when they entered, they realized that there were indeed a lot more people than usual. As soon as they entered, Mu Wanxin came first. She was here to pick up Lin Shae. She knew that she was coming back. She was still pregnant, so it was definitely not suitable for her to go inside. It was so chaotic, and there were doctors and nurses around. Moreover, the old master was critically ill. Although this was mostly speculation and no one said that these illnesses were contagious, they still wanted to be careful. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.